ставши на коліно, своє полкове знамено, дивлюсь на нього я востаннє, у нез'ясованій журбі, всю кров мою, всі скитання, воно вібрало у собі. Воно вібрало у собі. Відвагу нашу нашій волі, загиблих друзів імена, читаю нашого вімолі, я полкового знамена. На нього я востаннє, у нез'ясованій журбі, всю кров мою, всі скитання, воно вібрало у собі, всю кров
Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались з кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Хто воде всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
О, бля! Игорь!
Hello everyone, I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 408 of the news, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. And of course, the large headline and thumbnail and title of tonight's stream is that there has been a huge firefight in Bakhmut. At this moment, we actually understand that the Battle of Bakhmut is entering one of its most intense phases, as Wagner forces inside of the city of Bakhmut are currently assaulting the Ukrainian lines head-on, and video evidence has come out today showing that not only are they attacking them with infantry, but they're also attacking them with a large amount of artillery support, which may show that they have some more, I guess you could say, broader plans for how they're going to be breaking Bakhmut rather than threatening the rear lines. And as a matter of fact, instead of going into other news first, due to the situation in the city of Bakhmut and how intense the battle is at this moment, we'll be going there right now. Of course, to lay out the battlefield situation again, I believe if I remember the numbers and units correctly, we don't really get a lot of information on exactly what Russian units are where, but the 8th separate motorized rifle division is in the area in between Blahodane and Orikovo-Vasilivka. They are currently pushing down the M03 highway and also fighting over the small village as well. They also have forces that extend almost all the way down towards Bodanivka, but the Wagner forces then intermingle and then take over the front line from the area of Hromove and the semicircle around Bakhmut to its southern end in the direction of Opitne. From there, the 3rd motorized rifle brigade, I believe it's actually the 3rd mechanized division, making sure to try and get the name correct, takes over the front line in the Klishkivka direction near the highway perimeter, and then has their forces spread out along the front lines down to the direction of Kurdimivka, and then another division takes over from there, and then they have a front line that heads on into the Orlivka direction. At the moment, neither of the Russian army's divisions are really doing anything of significant note. It appears that right now the Ukrainian forces are still giving the Russians a bloody nose as far as we can put it down here in the area near the highway perimeter on the T0504, and Ukrainian forces are still holding this line incredibly well and making sure that Russian forces do not spill over the highway and stop supplies from coming in completely. Of course, the situation is still strenuous in this direction, and is probably, as far as the longevity of Bakhmut's defenses go, is the most important flank, as this is the only flank that we can see right now where supplies can be delivered into the city. Of course, many of y'all know of the race, which is where Ukrainian vehicles race on their way from Chasiv Yar down the highway through Ivanivsky and then on into Bakhmut. And this has become very famous at this point about the Battle of Bakhmut, is that this stretch of road is incredibly treacherous and dangerous for Ukrainian forces. And luckily, the Ukrainians have only been able to keep it treacherous and dangerous. Otherwise, the Russians would overrun the highway, and there would be no supplies going in whatsoever, and the dangerous jaunt couldn't even be made to try and keep the garrison intact. This is so far one of the fronts, the center of the city, with the least amount of potential in reality. The Ukrainians intend on holding the town, but it's very clear, and it's been very clear for a good while, that they're only holding the town as long as it serves the convenience of inflicting damage and losses onto Russian forces inside the city. And so far, they've been doing an incredibly good job at that, and right now, with the Wagner assault that is going on at this moment, it appears that they currently still have their defensive line set up along the railroad ties, and we can also see that over the past 24 hours, Russian offensive lines have started to pile up, as we can see here, along the railroad track itself, showing that there may be some kind of difficulty in getting Russian forces across, and so we'll most likely see that the forces in the south and to the direct east of the city continue to push forward until they're directly on the railroad tracks, where there's a bit of an open area that the Ukrainians can defend, and also it's elevated, which means that there's a small bit of relative cover there. We'll probably see that the Russians amass a larger breakthrough force somewhere along this railroad tie and then push over the railroad track and into Ukrainian defenses directly. It'll probably incur a large amount of casualties, and it'll probably incur a decent amount of armor losses as well, as that unit will most likely be backed up by tanks or armored personnel carriers, as we've seen similar breakthroughs like that throughout the history of the battle, and every single time they either involve some kind of an armored personnel carrier support or tank support trying to help those breakthrough forces. The Ukrainians, of course, have once again reformed their defensive positions. We've seen that they have given up some of their solidified positions in the north and are starting to move more south and into the center of the last parts of the city that are still controlled by the Ukrainians, and most likely trying to create some kind of a, suffice it to say, killing field here in the north, as we can see that the amount of city blocks, at least between controlled Ukrainian defenses and controlled, well, occupied Russian territory, is getting a little bit larger, several city blocks in length. And also, speaking of which, let me make sure that this is clear. Just because there are several city blocks in length of no man's land does not mean that Ukrainian defenses are right here where the gray begins and Russian offensive forces are right here where the red begins. These are just the areas that we can confirm the Russians control, and these are also the areas that we can confirm the Ukrainians can control. So in this gray area, it is pretty much a free-for-all. The Ukrainians and the Russians could be in this gray zone anywhere. In fact, Russian units could be behind Ukrainian ones could be behind Russian ones. It could be absolute chaos here for all we know. And based off the video evidence and footage we got today, especially in the east of the railroad tracks, it may be that kind of a situation where Russian and Ukrainian forces have actually overrun each other, and they're currently mixed into each other, so there is no solidified front line right here, right now. There are Russian and Ukrainian units fighting on top of each other, over each other, and under each other as well inside of the buildings. Further north, of course, where the 8th Separate Motorized Rifle Division is, it seems as though this part of the front line is seeing less activity. They did conduct a breakthrough near this little reservoir here about a day ago, but it appears to have been completely unsuccessful and repelled by a strong Ukrainian counteroffensive that has now forced them into this position in the meantime. That is, of course, protecting the Ukrainian army's rear, which is incredibly important. Much like the highway perimeter, inside of the city, there is a rear section as well. Because if the Russians were able to push forward through the forested area in the southern flank and onto the T-0504, they would cut off the supplies of the Ukrainian army. There is a similar situation right here near the MiG monument, which you can see right there. That little green triangle is where that MiG monument was, that many videos were taken and pictures were taken of units entering the city and fighting in the city. Those were taken right there. The Russians are just a few hundred yards away from that monument right now, and a similar situation in cutting off the supply lines could be seen right here if Russian forces attempt to push forward. It appears at the moment they are not trying to push forward in that area, which may show that the Ukrainians have some incredibly strong defensives there, and so it is impossible for Russian forces to advance. And so instead, it appears that they're going for I guess you could say, a breakthrough that is far less ambitious in scope, as they're trying to advance right here. And you can see that they were able to take about a quarter of another city block here today, which may be indicating that a breakthrough is possible in this area, or the Russians may be trying to conduct a breakthrough to get towards the high rises to the farthest eastern area of the city and directly threaten the Ukrainians' rear lines and forcing them to fall back and create new defensive positions and allowing the Russians more control of the city once more. But once again, there hasn't been a lot of activity up here where the 8th Separate Motorized Rifle Division has been. It appears that they are fighting for Rykova-Vasilivka, but there is no real activity going on here anymore. It appears that, for the large part, Russian, actual proper Russian army forces are having it the easiest in the battle, while the Wagner is literally throwing their men into a meat grinder at this point and just having them chewed up in the hopes of gaining a couple of extra city blocks per day. And that right now is largely what the situation looks like within the city of itself. And we're actually going to go to some video evidence and footage that we got in the center of the city today that shows how intense, I guess you could say, it has gotten. For example, we saw a Ukrainian soldier hiding inside of a destroyed building that had a shell land just within really 30 yards of him out in the middle of the street. And so here's the video. You can see the shell land right there. The Ukrainian soldier is completely uninjured, but an incredibly close call.
Тоха. Зачем ти мене втягнув? Ото Бахмутську, блядь.
A very interesting video, and once again showing that it appeared to not really be a large artillery piece. It actually appeared to be a mortar, which is once again tying into that, I guess you could say, the report that we got a while ago that the Russian army has largely run out of larger caliber artillery shells for their artillery forces. So it now appears that the Wagner has resorted to using mortar fire to help support their infantry in these offensives. Of course, this seems to not really be phasing the Ukrainians much. The heavy artillery seems to have been more destructive to them than the lighter artillery, although the lighter artillery can be used a lot more quicker and a lot more effectively, at least in terms of accuracy and when it's needed, than the heavy artillery can be. But it appears that it's not really helping out the Wagner in their push all too much. However, we did see more Ukrainian soldiers in the city of Bakhmut right here also engaged in battle. And of course, we're going to have to mute it when we see
the trap music.
the trap remix. Walk with your boys. But we can see the Ukrainian soldier going out here. We can see the artillery, the light mortars once again trying to do their work outside of the building. But of course, Ukrainian lines are holding as steady as possible and trying to make sure to hold this part of the city just near the railroad tracks. The Russians will have to advance through these destroyed buildings directly in front of them, which is incredibly difficult to push through in an offensive and very easy to fight from in a defensive battle. Rubble is actually one of the best defensive positions in an urban environment possible because there is no form of pattern or symmetry or any kind of logical conclusion that can be made with how the rubble is formed or where soldiers may be within that rubble. So it's actually very good for the Ukrainians to fight in these kinds of battlefield conditions in cities as destroyed as this, and it makes it quite difficult for forces like the Wagner to push forward, also considering they're using less trained and less effective conscripts brought from the prisons of Russia. That also adds in a decent amount to the amount of casualties that the Wagner will be taking and how difficult it will be for them to finally push the Ukrainians out of another city block if they ever do it. We're now going to be moving on behind the city and into the chicken tender. Many people know and love the chicken tender. It was a big deal for a large part of the battle, as a lot of Russian and Ukrainian forces fought at the summit of the several hundred-foot tall hill to the northeast of the city for control of it. Eventually, the Russians did secure control of it, but it wasn't after nearly 2 months of fighting for the chicken tender, and the Russians actually making more progress inside of the city itself than the hill. But we did see Wagner forces moving across the hill in an attempt to get into the city proper today, and it appears that they were hit by artillery in the process. Specifically, SPG-9s. We can see the Russians moving across the forest that's on top of the chicken tender, and it appears to be about a squad's worth. We can see the guy in the back here. It appears that he took a nap quite early today, and we can now see the artillery fire hitting the trenches further north and in the area of Krasnoura. It appears that the artillery fire is, of course, quite accurate.
Oh, got him.
We now see a Russian crawling into a window, and we can see him going right back out the window. We can now see another one hiding behind a stovepipe, and it appears that the stovepipe was not able to help him. And with that, that's the end of the clip, but once again showing a little bit of the artillery action that is happening in the Bakhmut direction, just directly on the chicken tender, and also north in between Bakhmut and Krasnoura in those trench works. We're now going to be moving to the western ridgeline to the northwest of the city near Yehidne, where we saw at least some pictures of what the Ukrainians are doing up there. Of course, massive trench works have been made around the entirety of the city by both the Russians and the Ukrainians, and we can see some Ukrainian soldiers hanging out here on the ridge. In the next picture, we can actually see him firing a RPG, most likely at the Russian forces that are based in the area of Yehidne right now on that ridgeline. In the next one, we can also see some Ukrainian soldiers inside of a dugout or a bunker. Not really a bunker, more of a dugout with an AGS, and it appears that this soldier is trying to do some kind of a telepathy with the hand. But still, it is good to see that these guys are, of course, up there on that ridgeline and helping to defend it, as this ridgeline is crucial to the defense of Bakhmut at the moment, and if the Russians were able to push the Ukrainians completely off of it, they would be able to fire down on any position that the Ukrainians have within the city itself, considering that the city is several hundred feet below these positions. We're now going to be moving on.
Those are some of the toughest people in the entire war right now, fighting one of the hardest battles.
Yeah, I mean, like, it is an insane battle right now, especially with how the battlefield's looking. A good while ago, about 3 months ago, I would say, the battlefield was definitely not that bad. I mean, the city was getting blown away every day, but the battlefield positions that the Ukrainians had taken up on the chicken tender and the hill to the southeast, they were very good, and so they weren't really having that bad of a time. The Russians were going through living hell every day. Now, with how the front lines have developed, it is kind of a mixed battle right now, a bit of a mixed bag in the city, because both the Russians and the Ukrainians are fighting in some very strenuous and difficult positions, yet still these Ukrainian soldiers are pulling off what seems to almost be the impossible, and they're somehow keeping enough control of this western ridgeline that the Russians are able to use it against the garrison in the city. We're now going to be moving on to the southern direction near Opitne, where we saw the Achilles division of defending Bakhmut in the southern direction of the town. And so, of course, we're going to have to mute it because it's playing that pangolin. We can see them in a red light room.
Playing that what?
The pangolin.
Pangolin.
I think that's actually an animal. But anyways, we can see these guys hanging out, of course, on their phones. Kids in their phones these days. And we can see a Ukrainian soldier having to walk through this incredibly muddy trench. We can now see them flying a drone off into the distance to pull off the good deeds. We can, of course, see the pot-marked hellscape that is the southern fields of the Bakhmut area, and we can also see some Russian equipment burning in this area. We can now see some artillery fire being brought on to the extensive trench works that the Russians have been building in this area as well. Actually, AGS fire, more like. It appears to be 40mm grenades. And we can now see a Russian soldier trying to make a breakthrough for it, as it appears that most of his squad is not in good shape, and they may just be taking a nap at the bottom of the trench. We can now see an artillery shell land directly on top of the rest of the squad. If they weren't taking a nap, they are certainly having a nice one now. And that's the end of the clip. But, of course, fairly interesting to see that the Achilles division is levying their artillery in generally this area right here to make sure that Russian forces that are funneling their way into the southern area of the city are taking losses before they even engage the Ukrainian infantry. We're now going to be moving on to the southern flank of the battlefield today, and while the Ukrainian, I guess you could say, perimeter forces are keeping the highway open and clear for supplies and reinforcements to continue to make their way into the city, it has seen some action today, as in this video, we saw some fighting in this area in the forest near the highway. And so with that, here's the video. We see Ukrainian soldiers in the tree line. And we hear a small amount of fire. We can now see him firing, but apparently the audio has now been muted because we can see him taking the recoil of firing the rifle, but at the same time, we're not hearing anything.
That's kind of like these police body cams, like the audio turns off when the action starts happening.
Show me your hand, show me... And then it's just muted. You just hear like a little crack, and then it's muted. Now we can actually hear, well, we heard a little bit of audio. The soldier has gotten to the floor. We saw what may have been an explosion. We can now see the Ukrainian soldier on the move. See a Ukrainian crawling back behind him. We now see him firing again, as it appears that the squad is retreating for the large part. Now the squad is setting up a position a little bit further into the tree line and still firing at the Russians. You can see him continuing to fire. And now you can see the soldier running back to the rear of the line pretty quickly. And with that, that appears to be the end of the clip. But giving a look at the intense fights that are going on in the forested, I guess you could say, tree line near the canal, near the T-0504 highway, and what it's been looking like for some Ukrainian soldiers down there. And while the Russians do understand the relevance and the significance of the T-0504 highway, and they are attacking these forces heavily, the Ukrainians are still unbelievably holding the line. And I have to say, it is absolutely impressive to see the Ukrainians conducting an offensive like that, and hopefully they can keep it up and make sure that this highway remains open so reinforcements and supplies can continue to make it to the heavy fighting occurring in the city. We're now going to be moving into the direction of the canal in the southern flank, where we also saw the Ukrainians trying to soften up these Russians that are conducting this offensive with a Humvee. And here's the clip. You see them firing, and it appears that they're actually hitting nearer to the canal area. They're now firing off a couple of more grenades. I mean, we can hear some rifle fires somewhere in the area. We don't know if that's coming from the Ukrainians or the Russians.
Красавчик, туда, насыпай, насыпай.
Man, those grenade launchers are mean.
Все, фаер-шоу. Банда экипажа.
With that scene in the clip, but very nice to see that they were giving the Russians a little bit, just a smidgen. The Russians, man, they said, "Can we please have some ammo?" And the Ukrainians said, "Just a little." And then, okay, fire. And then got them. But it's great to see that they're using these Humvees. I think that was a Mark 19 that was on the turret. Not an AGS, but a Mark 19. And it's great to see that they're using Western equipment to also give the Russians a little bit of free ammo. Of course, not usable. It's a one-time use, and the Ukrainians are the ones using it. But at least the Russians are being supplied with some kind of ammunition out there somewhere. We're now moving on from this little bit of news and on into the next one, further towards Klishkivka, where we saw the 3rd Division taking some artillery losses. Of course, this is the 3rd Russian, I believe it's the Russian 3rd separate mechanized brigade, or division, or motorized division. I'm not really sure, but it is the 3rd Division. Nonetheless, here's the losses. Oh man, we can hear the trap.
Oh man, that's about to be a hardcore bass drop.
We can see the Russians right down there firing what appears to be a Mista B, and we can now see a Ukrainian artillery shell hit the Mista B dead on. We can also see some ammunition cooking off and flying out of the fire. And oh, man, look, it's like Montgomery, you know, back when the tracer fire would fly over our house. Look at that.
It's making you nervous just talking about it.
Yeah, it's making me nervous. I'm getting flashbacks.
What are you, nervous, man?
Do a push-up, fatty. But we can now see the artillery piece once again roasting every single hit, popping a little firework off, or a little shooting star, whatever you want to call it. But it is nice to see that the Atom unit was actually able to annihilate a Russian artillery piece near Klishkivka. And that was not the only one. Many of y'all may remember yesterday, we saw a Nona getting blown up in Klishkivka. And some of y'all, of course, want to see another. And to that, I say it's Nona your business. But because it is the news, and we can't sit there and just say that, we saw a 3rd Nona get destroyed today. Apparently, we didn't see one of them get destroyed on film, but it appears that the count of the Nonas that have been destroyed in Klishkivka alone are around the number of 3. So here's another one of those Nonas right there being blown away. Of course, once again, the trap is hitting strong. We can see the Nona's camouflage. We can see the artillery shell hit somewhat above it, and then another shell hitting directly on it. We can now see the Nona boining and toasting. Now, Matthew, I think that that Krupp has been beat. For once in their history, the Germans have been beaten something rather than making the crappiest beamers. They have been able to make a nice toaster. The Russians have made a toaster better than Krupp's.
I mean, maybe so, maybe, but it might last for a lot shorter time than they would have made one.
Well, I think I would have to agree with you there. But on the bright side, it has absolutely no warranty.
Oh, yeah, I guess you could say that.
Also, I like the subtitle over here. It says "Groli with novi Call of Duty, Orki Groli." It's like that meme where someone calls up a McDonald's and speaks entirely in Japanese but orders stuff off the menu. So he's like, "Could a hamburger?" And it's like, what? It's like, wait, what do you say? But I love the caption, and it's great to see that a 3rd Nona has been destroyed in the Klishkivka area. Moving on further up into the north, we only saw a little bit of activity up here. And while the 8th separate motorized rifle brigade, well, the division, is fairly large and was actually one of the ones that we understand to have taken over the Battle of Soledar about most of the way through, and then taken Krasnohora, like about a month and a half or 2 months ago, they haven't really been doing much. However, the 3rd Brigade, also known as the Azov, was able to take out a few of their mortar pieces today. And so here's the clip. Oh, gotta mute that. But these may have been some of the 60mm mortars that were being fired into Bakhmut that we saw on video today, and we could see them getting hit right there. One thing I will have to make a note of, though, is that this video was not taken recently. There's still snowfall on the ground in this video, and we estimate that it's probably 3 weeks old. But it was uploaded today. No one had ever shown this video before, so we included it in the news. So it's not a direct reflection on today's activities, but it does show losses that had never been accounted for in video or picture evidence. We can now see the ammunition for the mortars burning up. And we can also see some Russians right there watching their mortar go up in flames. And they're going, oh, bliet. No more mortar, bliet. And now we can see it without infrared. A nice toasty campfire for some very cold Russians. And they're getting even colder. Well, that's the end of the clip, but that's the only activity that we saw in the northern direction of the Bakhmut front today. And of course, the situation does appear to be somewhat strenuous and somewhat difficult, as a matter of fact. But the Ukrainians have pretty much made it their intention, and it is a very solid intention when you look at it, to fight for the city every inch of ground possible and to inflict as many losses on the Russian army as possible before they have to withdraw. That is the going plan for the Ukrainians right now. And of course, I have to reiterate it again, because we've been saying this for nearly 5 months now. And this was the agreed upon statement by everyone a long time ago, is that Bakhmut is not a strategic city. The Ukrainians really aren't fighting for the city because it is strategic. They're fighting for it because of the massive amounts of Russian forces that are being used to try and take it. And so, of course, not really that great. You know, another example I'm actually going to give y'all is the First World War. And let me show y'all a map. World War I map, Western Front, in about 1916. We'll go with this. And I'll show y'all what this map looks like and explain why some battles happen and they really have no strategic importance, but yet they're massive. So here's a map of France in 1915 and 1916 and what the front lines looked like at the time. Hopefully the graphic quality improves. It appears that it's not, so we're going to go to this one, and hopefully it improves on this one. Come on. Come on. Oh, whatever. We'll move to this one. Here we go. Okay, so in this front line, as you can see right here, there is a bit of a bowl that the Germans were able to make by the point of 1916 that would have led them straight on to France. Well, not straight on to France. They're in France. Straight on to Paris. This was the most important part of the front lines in terms of the actual strategic value it would give for a breakthrough. Because if they broke through here, which they did a couple of times in the war, they pretty much would be unopposed and on the shortest route to Paris and on the course to end the war. That, however, never turned out to be the case, because one thing that both sides learned by about 1916 is that these front lines were not moving in the speeds of wars before, or wars to come even afterwards. These front lines were largely solid, and so it wasn't about trying to gain ground to end the war. It was more about inflicting massive casualties to try and cripple one's army for the war to end. And so the Germans decided not to go for the strategically important areas near Amiens and towards Paris, but they decided to send most of their forces to the area right here, which is called Verdun. And the Battle of Verdun would be the most costly and deadly battle to ever happen on the Western Front, with nearly 700,000 French soldiers losing their lives over the course of that battle. The Germans came up with the idea that if they were able to bleed the French dry in a feint offensive for the large part in that area, because they wouldn't want to lose Verdun due to its historical significance, and also the significance to their pride and prestige, they would dedicate everything to it, and the French did. And the Germans actually crippled the French army so badly in that battle that that would be some of the reasons why mutinies would start to become very prevalent in the French army by 1917. And that's kind of what we're seeing right here in the Battle of Bakhmut. the Ukrainians really don't see a lot of strategic significance in this town. The only reason they're fighting for it is because the Russians find some kind of significance in this town, and they are more than willing to fight for it. Now, the Ukrainians have slowly started to shift their line of thinking about the city more into a French Verdun mindset, where the city is a fortress city, much like Verdun was, and so they now have to fight for it regardless of the losses to try and hold it. But of course, we also hear that Zelensky is saying that the Ukrainian forces within Bakhmut may be withdrawing sometime soon because they've done everything they can there. But you can kind of see the historical similarities in between a city like Verdun in the battle that happened there in the First World War and the battle that's happening around Bakhmut right now. And so that is largely the situation that we're seeing there. And of course, speaking of the importance that the Ukrainians are finding in holding Bakhmut and inflicting massive losses on the Russians to cripple them for the rest of the war, they are bringing forward even more reinforcements, as BMP-1s were pictured somewhere in the rear lines area, getting ready to make the race into Bakhmut and to make sure to help out the forces there. And we can see pictures of them getting ready to head on down that highway on the BMPs. Also, what's really interesting is that right here, we actually see a BMR-1. These things are a little interesting because they use the turret of a BMP-2, but they have the 76mm recoilless gun of the BMP-1 inside of that turret. Very neat vehicle, one that no one really talks about much, and a very interesting variant. But anyways, we're going to be moving on from all of the news that we have around Bakhmut and on into Russia, because we've been seeing some interesting things happening here today. For example, one of the aviation factories in Voronezh caught on fire, and from this picture that we can see right here, it looks like a large amount of the factory is on fire.
I would say. And what did they make there? Like helicopters or planes?
We don't really know. Let me type it in, and let's see. The Voronezh Aviation Factory. The Voronezh Aircraft Production Association. So let's see here. Founded in 1932. We want to know what it does today, though. Between 2008 and 2015, it produced some parts for the Airbus A320s and A380s.
Really?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I didn't know that. And it
weird.
produces, let's see, the wide-body aircraft, the IL-96-400M and the IL-112V. However, the yearly revenue of the plant is lower than the average price of one wide-body airliner.
Huh.
Well, so from what we can collect from this, it's not really that big of a factory, but it did produce some parts and some equipment that would be needed to keep the Russian military running. We're also going to pull up what an IL-96 is, because as far as I recall, it is a commercial it's a commercial airliner made by the Aleutian Company. So this doesn't really have a lot to do with Russia's war effort, their production of parts for the IL-96, but it does have to do with the IL-112Vs. We don't really know of a lot of these in existence, and according to Wikipedia, there's only 3 prototypes of these aircraft around. But still, it is nice to see that another factory burned down. This one has a little less significance to the war itself, considering what it produces. It's not as important as the Yaroslavl motor factory that produced engines for the Ural 4320s, but it is still good to see that a factory that did produce some kind of equipment for the war has burned to the ground.
It seems like the Russians would probably invest in some no smoking signs by now. It's like, how many buildings have to catch on fire before they buy some?
You would think they would. You really would think that. But for some reason, it just never crosses their mind. It's like, just let them smoke and let them drink around the industrial machinery,
Man, the Ukrainians could go in with some signs that says smoking area here and put them next to like every crucial building and have them burned down in a day.
Put them near to a propane tank and see what happens. Oh, man. Dude, that's going to be the next thing that Putin has to come out about. He's going to be like, there are acts of terrorism where smoking signs are being put up in sensitive places and stuff's getting blown up everywhere. And then man, you're going to see someone creep up behind him in the middle of the speech and put up a smoking zone sign right behind him. And then you're going to see 30 random Russians just start smoking behind him in the speech. But anyways, we're now moving on into the area of Volgograd, where we saw Prigozhin tell everyone, and of course we don't have the direct translation here, but he was saying that there were largely no problems with the Wagner unit, and everything was going fine while he was standing in front of a graveyard filled with thousands of Wagnerites. It's kind of like Kadyrhovites. I was thinking, like, wait a minute, that's not the saying, but it is. But anyways, here he is saying that nothing is wrong whatsoever, while the I guess you could say the background shows the never-ending cemetery of Wagner soldiers that did not make it home alive.
Самое кладбище ЧВК «Вагнер», вокруг которого было много вопросов и обсуждений. Здесь продолжают хоронить бойцов ЧВК «Вагнер». На сегодняшний день никаких проблем нет. Мы его собираемся благоустраивать и делать из этого кладбища мемориал для будущих поколений, которые должны понимать, что любая война, она приводит к тому, что уходят бойцы, уходят из этой жизни, остаются с нами вечно, и их память остается вместе с нами. Поэтому вот то самое кладбище. Да, оно растет. Те, кто воюют.
I like how he got the, I guess you could say it's like, what is that thing, Matthew, that you attach to the end of a Dremel that, like, smooths and shines surfaces?
Like a grinder?
Yeah, I like how they use...
Or like a polisher or something?
Yeah, but I like how they used the polisher on the back of his head. It's very reflective and very smooth. And also, I like how he sits there and goes, nothing's wrong whatsoever, and then points to the cemetery behind him. He's like, yeah, see, it's normal.
Те, кто воюют,
Well, like, what's he trying to say here?
иногда погибают. Так устроена жизнь.
Let's see if we can get a direct translation down here. So, this is the same cemetery at PMC Wagner around which there was a lot of questions and discussions. Here, the PMC fighters of Wagner continue to be buried. As of today, there's absolutely no problems. We plan to improve it and make out of this cemetery a memorial for the future generations that need to understand that any war results in the fact that fighters die. They leave this life. They stay with us forever. Their memories stay with us. This is the same cemetery. Yes, it's growing. Those who wage war sometimes die. This is how life works. But not to that number. There's literally thousands of them in there. Like, this isn't World War I.
I wonder if he walks through here and, like, actually knows that he helped contribute to their death. Or does he walk through thinking he's actually righteous and, like, you know, having all these people basically killed?
I don't know. I really don't know. Because honestly, the guy seems like a sociopath saying that while standing in a graveyard of thousands of dead Wagner soldiers. That seems a little sociopathic to say, yeah, they die, so what? You know, it's like, that's just, and that right there is a dismissive statement. Instead of saying something like, there's like 7,000 dead Wagner soldiers in this cemetery, and it's a very high number. The losses have been incredibly high, and it's been a war that's costed a lot. Instead, he just goes, so people die, so what? It's like, that's not the kind of statement that normal people make when looking at something like this, but I guess that's the statement that Prigozhin, or as we call him around here very lovingly, that's the kind of statements that Nutsack makes, I guess, to sleep at night. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news inside of Russia as well, and we're now going to be moving on into our location unknowns. But before we get to those location unknowns, we have some incredibly, and I have to say this, exquisite polls to cover tonight. They are like the level of cooking that you would see from Gordon Ramsay when he tries to cook a grilled cheese sandwich. I'm just kidding. That was actually terrible. He's a pretty good cook, but a grilled cheese sandwich, I don't know. That thing was burned. Anyways, we're now going to be moving into the polls. So with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so we have 3 polls to address like usual, but first off, I want to say that since today is Good Friday, we have a little bit less viewership than usual, and also I have less questions than usual. So if you have one for us, the odds of yours getting answered tonight is probably pretty high. So feel free to put @EnforcerMatt in the chat and your question behind it, and I'll add it to the spreadsheet. You know, so that being said, yes.
When you said that, Matthew, I just realized, because I was sitting here, I was thinking, I was like, why in the world are we like 900 viewers short, or really like 1,500 short? And then and all day long I was thinking today, because, you know, I had like a friend who told me they were going to be doing an event on Good Friday, and I was like, oh, today's like a nice day, it's Good Friday and all that. And you know, and then I never made the connection while we were on stream that it's Good Friday. Never made the connection. So that's why like a fifth of the Lee Spring Army is not here tonight, is because it is Good Friday, and I completely forgot about that because we just keep on doing what we do. So with that, let's get on to the polls, and also make sure to shoot Matthew some questions. And I'd also like to say I thank you all so much for joining us on Good Friday, because we run the stream 6 days a week regardless, but Good Friday is a big deal for a lot of people, and it looks like a good amount of the Lee Spring Army went and are still celebrating Good Friday, and to them, I hope they have a great Good Friday. And to all of y'all who joined us tonight, I thank y'all for joining us on Good Friday. Y'all could be out doing Good Friday stuff, yet y'all are here, and I got to thank y'all for that. But with that, we're on to the polls.
All right, and the first poll says, do you think the Pentagon classified documents leak was real or disinformation to throw off Russia? 42% said disinformation, 19% said it was a legitimate leak, 19% said unsure, and another 19% said too early to know. And that's quite crazy. It was 19% on every option except for disinformation, which was 42%. Never seen that before in a poll. It's quite interesting. But on this one, I gotta say, I think it's too early to know. There's some signs that make me want to lean toward it's a legitimate leak, and I'll tell you what those are. First off, the Pentagon will not comment on the validity of the documents. Apparently, I've seen on the internet there are some original documents that they appear to be original, and then there's some altered documents that it looks like Russia might have gone through and doctored to make it look like they were winning the war, which is clearly false. And the third one is the U.S. tried to remove it from the internet. They tried to send out a notice to Twitter to take it down off of all their posts. So I would have to say that those facts right there lead me to believe that maybe the Pentagon is worried about some of the material that is leaked out. I've also noticed that analysts aren't really willing to comment on the material either, suggesting they don't want to talk about it. So while it could be disinformation, I have a feeling it might be legitimate, but it's just simply too early to know. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, in my opinion, it also seems to be somewhat legitimate because we actually hear that apparently the government is trying to have Twitter go through and pretty much bleach anything that has the documents. So that may be the case. I believe it would actually be somewhat accurate information, but of course the Russians went in their own typical fashion and went and re-edited it to try and make it seem like they were in a far better position than they were. And if that was the case, you know, the altered document saying that the Ukrainians are very bad off, why the hell haven't they won yet? You know, it's like if they are that bad off that they are nearly dead, why in the world did you not win several months ago? Why in the world is it still that a single block being taken in Bakhmut is still a massive victory for them on a daily basis? Like, the Ukrainian army is nowhere close to collapse. The Russians, from what we can tell, are getting on the verge of collapse. They've been almost on the verge of collapse for months on end at this point, and they're constantly bringing in old equipment to try and keep this thing running. One thing, unfortunately, I never got to see the a high enough definition picture of the documents to make sure to cross-examine my information of Russian troop positions and locations versus the sheets Russian locations, the supposed ones. So I never got to see if my information was accurate when compared to something that supposedly came from the Department of Defense. So sadly, I didn't get to see that, because if so, I would have made sure to actually lay down where the Russian units were and what parts of the line they controlled, but I never got to see it well enough, at least a high enough definition picture to do that.
So take this with a grain of salt. Obviously, we haven't been able to confirm it. The Pentagon won't comment on it, but the non-altered version that has been put around on social media does give total assessed losses, and this is supposedly official from the U.S. intelligence services. It shows that Russia has lost about 35,000 to 43,000 killed in action. It looks like they're saying Ukraine has lost, it looks like 16,000 to 17,000 killed in action, and that was as of March 1st. Also, something interesting that I noticed on these documents is, and I want to kind of keep this service level to an extent because this is kind of not something you want to put out there too loudly. It looks like NATO might have some people inside of Ukraine that are not from the Ukrainian military. I'll just leave it at that.
Well, of course, again, we don't know about the validity of the documents, and on top of that, did it go into the number? Because if it's going into Russian casualty numbers in the infantry, did it go into the casualty losses on the armor?
Let's see. It's really grainy, so I'm having to sort of like squint to see it. I don't see that right off the bat, but it's showing about 90 or so non-Ukrainian military individuals are apparently operating there.
Only 90?
90.
Well, I mean, like, based off of that, I think I recall that we said that we were sending in advisors into Ukraine. Those are probably the 90 advisors or so. Because that was...
Oh,
that
these
was,
guys aren't listed as advisors.
Well, you know, I mean, like, we send in... Like, I know they're listed as special forces, but we send in special forces everywhere to be advisors. They usually are the ones who are advising people and training them and such things like that.
I mean, could be, but I doubt that they're advisors. if it's real.
Well, what are 90 guys going to do? You know, 90 guys, burgers and fries. I don't think they'll be doing.
Probably handle training. Probably.
Well, with that, we're gonna leave it there. Of course, everyone has their opinion on it. I think it may be somewhat realistic because we have heard of classified document leaks before, that of course have not been fake either. So it may be a real one, although the numbers sound a little off, especially if we even compare them to a system like Oryx, where they collect all of the picture evidence of destroyed Russian vehicles. There's no way the Russians have only lost 45,000 guys. Yet they've lost thousands of tanks that we can confirm with picture evidence and thousands of APCs that we can also confirm with picture evidence. That means that really the only people who are getting killed in this war are the tankers and the APC crew members, and that's it. So those numbers seem a little low to me. But with that, I hope we addressed that poll fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next poll says, within the leaked documents, they allegedly contain Ukrainian losses and other sensitive info, like we just discussed, and what are your thoughts? 28% said if real, it will have some impact. 39% said it's not a real leak. 16% said if real, it's probably going to cost lives. And 17% said if real, there will be no impact at all. Now, from what I've seen in these alleged documents, I wouldn't go as far as to say it's going to cost lives. It didn't appear to be anything that sensitive. And also, it is quite old. It was from March 1st. I would say it would have some impact, but not very much. So I'm with the 28%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say it's not really going to be exposing anything incredibly sensitive, because it didn't really. I mean, like, it was really like the classified document that was released was almost an infographic. It wasn't going into great details about anything specific. It was just kind of giving a little bit of a rundown and an overview, at least from the pictures I saw. And those kinds of classified documents, while of course classified, they aren't detrimental if they're leaked. Now, something that would be very detrimental if leaked would be something, say, from like the Redstone Arsenal, giving the exact specifications of what kind of rocket propellant the HIMARS uses and such things like that. That would be sensitive because that's giving away technological secrets that we try and protect. Things like how much support we're sending to the Ukrainians, considering that almost all of it can be visibly seen on picture and video evidence alone, isn't really giving anything to the Russians that they don't already have just by wandering around the internet. And so with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our third poll, this is our last one of the first question segment. It says, let me flip over to it actually, I wasn't on it. The third question says, do you believe that small groups of NATO special forces are operating within Ukraine? And this happens to be the topic of discussion a second ago. 34% said no, absolutely not. 30% said it's possible, 8% said unsure, and 28% said yes, I believe so. And on this one, I'm going to say it is possible, simply because we cannot confirm the validity of those leaked documents. But obviously, if they were real, it would indicate that it's definitely so. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say I'm going to have to remain kind of on the fence on that one because, yeah, I can kind of see why it would be classified, but at the same time, it seems like it is kind of on the borderline of being overclassified. But, you know, I get it is what it is. I'll just leave that one as undecided, in my opinion. So with that, I hope we addressed that poll fairly well. And now we are on into the questions. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
And moving right into our Super Chat questions, up first, we have a $115 donation from Mark, General, LSA. And yes, he has been promoted to General. He's self-promoting every single week, but Mark deserves the promotion. And Mark says, carry on, gentlemen, and puts the winky face.
And we will, Mark, and carry on. And thank you so much once again for the support, Mark, and appreciating this channel so much that you would send in support like that. It's massive. We're incredibly thankful to you, and thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. And we will make sure to carry right on. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and let's see something here. Let's see, my YouTube chat is freaking out over here.
Uh-oh.
Anyway, I'll see about that in a minute. But our next one goes to... Yes. Our next one goes to Vance Hicks, who puts in a $20 donation and says, Enforcer, perish the thought. But if Ukraine loses this war, how much precious equipment will the Russians get? And do you think this thought plays into U.S. thinking on sending the best stuff?
Let's see here. And Enforcer, perish the thought. Let's see, how much precious equipment will the Russians get? Not really a lot. This is something this is something that I have to say was kind of a little overblown, especially with the withdrawal from Afghanistan. And I'll explain what went on there kind of in a nutshell. Of course, not trying to get into politics, but when the withdrawal from Afghanistan happened, we actually left, from what I understand, several $billion, or somewhere around $4 to $6 billion of equipment behind in Afghanistan. And what we were saying is that, you know, pretty much we left behind $4 to $6 billion of military aid to the Taliban for them to build up their own military within their own country. The problem with that statement was that these vehicles require upkeep to keep running. And, you know, yeah, they did get some Blackhawks, they got Humvees, you know, I think they even got a couple of aircraft, but without a constant supply of parts to keep those vehicles running, they will break down fairly soon, and then they'll be completely inoperable, and the Afghans will be at the exact same point they were back when they were fighting the United States inside of Afghanistan. They'll still be having the same kind of equipment they had then. So it is a bit of a misnomer to say that the Russians could take the equipment, like you know, a lot of people say the Afghans didn't start using it, because at this point, if you ever look at video footage of people going to Afghanistan, you'll see most U.S. equipment has been used a little bit and then broke down and was abandoned. Sometimes just on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere, because there's no way to repair these things. So you run them until they break apart, and then you just leave them alone and you abandon them. So that would probably be a similar situation in Ukraine, that the Russians probably could capture a good bit of that equipment. If it was inevitable that the Ukrainians were going to lose, we would probably be actively involved in recollecting a lot of our Lend-Lease equipment and getting it back into the United States or back into the Western countries that sent it. Like, for example, if for some reason, let's just say, the Russians became the United States and they just started steamrolling Ukraine with that kind of advanced military weaponry that we have, we would probably say something like, hey, we need the Patriots back, we need the NASAMs back, we need all of that stuff back. And we would have it sent right back from Ukraine, right back into Poland, and then we would have it transported wherever we would need it to go. So the chances, in my opinion, of the Russians ever getting that equipment and either using it is very low, because they won't even have the parts to be able to repair and operate those vehicles. And even still, even if they do just get equipment that they necessarily can't use, but they can take apart and learn how to reverse engineer, the Russians just don't have the advanced kind of industry, or the, I guess you could say, connection to advanced industries in other countries to be able to mass produce stuff like a Javelin. It would be very hard for them, to be very expensive, and it have to be produced in limited numbers. And then the final point is that, once again, it's not really, I'm trying to think of how to say it. They just really, those 2 points are really the only ones when I think about it, because they can't even use it if they got it. They would just kind of be able to have it for a little bit, and once it broke down, there wouldn't be any replacement parts coming in for them to keep them, you know, upkeep them and keep them going. So then they would probably just abandon them or leave them to rot. So with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does answer the question fairly well. And believe it or not, many people may not believe this. This is actually crazy. We did the same thing to a point in Vietnam when the United States withdrew from Vietnam. It's actually more expensive to take the equipment and transport it back to the United States in most instances whenever the military is deployed around the world, than it is to just leave it there. And so we actually did that when we withdrew from Vietnam as well, is that we just left Vietnam, left the equipment, and then handed it over to the Republic of Vietnam. And then, you know, later on they got steamrolled by North Vietnam, and then the North Vietnamese largely came into possession of a lot of American equipment through those means as well. So it's kind of a running standard that it's fine to lose equipment. It won't really give away that much, and also it's a little bit more cost efficient and kind of clears up the room for you know, supply yards to have new stuff introduced into it, or to just move other stuff into other supply yards here in the country or around the world. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support, and I hope that answers that question very well. And thank you so much once again, Vance, for being around here forever, and also asking a really good question tonight. That was a really good one, and I hope that answer was pretty decent. Also, I know I said Vietnamese. I'm so sorry, everyone. I've been saying that for so long. I've been saying that for so long. I can't break it. I'm conscientiously trying to say Vietnamese, but it's always going to come out at this point as Vietnamese. I'm so sorry, everyone. But with that, we are on to the last question of this segment.
All right, and before we get to that one, I want to say a big shout out. Happy birthday to Gregory Pennick. He's been around forever, and in 1 hour, it's his birthday. He told me in the live chat. So happy birthday to you, Gregory, and it's not there yet, but happy early birthday.
You know what, Matthew? Better yet, I'm not going to say happy birthday yet. Remind me at 11 o'clock that it's his birthday, and we're going to put everything on hold. We're going to tell him happy birthday when it is, like, his actual birthday.
I'll see if I can juggle that.
See if you can. See if you no pressure or anything. No pressure. But happy early birthday, just in case if for some reason we aren't able to juggle that. Happy early birthday, Gregory. And it is super cool to know that you're on this stream tonight when your birthday is just an hour away. So happy birthday, Gregory. And I hope that everyone in the Lee Spring Army gives you a happy birthday as well. And I hope you have a fun one after it begins here in an hour. And so with that, we are now on to the final question.
All right, and that one goes to Enforcer for President, longtime channel viewer and supporter who puts in a $50 donation and a super sticker of the YouTube creature on a HIMARS blasting through the sky and probably going to hit something important.
La, 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 la. La, 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 la. And I thank you so much for the support. By the way, Matthew, I have to ask, are the neighbors here tonight?
Let's see. Nah.
Okay, I can act a little bit more unhinged tonight. So I was thinking, I was like, hopefully I didn't make myself sound like an idiot with a HIMARS on. But anyways, I thank you so much once again for the support, Enforcer for President. I thank you for your vote, and I also thank you for sending us a HIMARS and a pair riding a HIMARS. What is better, Matthew, than an apple and a partridge in a pear tree?
What's better than it? Nothing.
Yes. No, a pear on a missile. So that, thank you once again for the support, Enforcer for President, and thank you for your vote in 2040. I hope that in 2040 I can become the president. I hope in 2040 I'd still want to become the president. And also, thank you once again for helping this channel.
I have second thoughts already, are you?
Oh, well, I mean, you know, call him out.
Call him out. He'll be there. Trust me, he'll be there. He'll be on the media talking about, man, I can't stand him.
Yeah, and then they never call anything out. That was probably
I remember back in the day, he was clickbaiting.
Oh, yeah, let's be something like that. But anyways, thank you so much once again for the support, Enforcer President, and I hope we address that fairly well. And of course, it's now time for us to move on into the location unknown news. Starting off with our first clip showing a Ukrainian mortar crew trying to do their job, and this guy was filming them, and it appears that this time the filming was too much, and they said, dude, quit it. And it's just, so here we go.
По голове нахуй. Ты заебал своим телефоном своим ебаным.
Падла ебаная, ты
Тут, блядь, время, блядь, ты, сука, телефон ебешь свой ебаный.
Сейчас,
Ладос, пошла еще одна.
Dang. A little bit of dirt with that.
Yeah.
Какие нахуй проблемы?
Dude, this team commander is pissed. He's like, get off the freaking phone, man. He's literally ranting the whole time. Like, there he is right there.
Да ебало
Тебе по голове нахуй. Ты заебал своим телефоном своим ебаным.
Падла ебаная, ты
Тут, блядь, время, блядь, ты, сука, телефон ебешь свой ебаный. Ладос, пошла еще
He's
одна.
going off.
Man, it's wild the soldiers just like ignoring them and launching it and just kind of, walking around.
Нахуй, тут, блядь, проблемы, нахуй.
He's still going.
Какие нахуй проблемы?
And then that's the end of the clip. But you can see that sometimes the video clips are a little hard to come by because team commanders, squad leads, and all that may be getting pissed off at the soldiers filming videos like this one has. And it looks like he's like, dude, stop filming, get to work. And honestly, can't blame him. There's work to be done, but we're always very appreciative of the Ukrainian soldiers who send us video footage of what they're doing out there as they give the entire world a glimpse into their lives and the reality of the situation.
He's probably cursing them out because he's filming in vertical instead of horizontal.
You know what? That's probably it. Honestly, that's probably it. You just hit it
Yep.
dead on the nail. Anyways, with that, we can see a BTR-4 crossing a river. Where's the Chad music? And we see the BTR-4 going into the river and then crossing like a duck.
The BTR-4 is an amphibious creature, one of special renown.
And you can actually see right here the little bolt propeller. Isn't that cool?
That is cool.
That is really cool. And then it moves on over the hill, and it goes into the horizon. Very nice to see. And I like that this thing has boat propellers. It makes it seem kind of cute to be one of the most effective killing machines of an APC that the Ukrainian army has. And like Angry Penguin said, crazy, man, crazy. And so with that, we're going to be moving on from that clip and on into the next one, where we also saw a Tachka fired at the Russians. Oh,
Dang.
God. I know this song. I'm going to be... Anyways, we can see the Tachka launcher elevating the missile out there. We can also see that this was probably taken a week or two ago. And now we're about to see the Tachka fire. You know what a Ukrainian missile team says when they catch a Russian?
Jaga jaga.
No, instead of saying gotcha, they go, Tachka! Boom! And then they get them. But anyways,
oh, man.
Oh, man. I feel so sorry for the Russians that are going to be hit by that Tachka. They will never see it coming. And on top of that, I guess you can say that, hey, Tachka! Anyways, with that, we're moving on from that clip and on into the next one, where we also saw some Ukrainian pilot in the skies. Once again, snow was heavily on the ground in this video, so we know that this is a winter footage, but it was uploaded today, and so we included it in today's news segment because well, as far as we know, no one has seen this video before. Something
that booty
in
music.
the rain.
Who hurt this man?
Oh, man. It's a sad day when you make a kind man cry, or something like that. But we can see the aircraft flying around. It may be a MiG-29. It is a MiG-29. I was looking at the cockpit. It's a MiG-29 for sure. And it looks like he's doing some pretty sharp turns over the fields below. Man, look at that. He's going in for a little dive right there. Probably freaking out the Russians that were down there. They're going, suka, blah! And then he didn't shoot anything, so they just had a nice heart attack, panic attack, whatever you want to call it. Truster, what do you think they would have in that situation? A heart attack or a panic attack? You are the physician in the house, and I want to know from
left aorta coronary.
They'll be having an anaphylactic shock. That is actually an allergic reaction. I think it is. But
Yeah.
anyways, very nice to see the maneuvers that this pilot was pulling off over this winter landscape below, and very neat to see. With that, we're now going to be moving on from this clip and on to our last one, where we saw the Russian losses for the day. And interestingly enough, the Russian losses have decreased, and it appears that they're staying at a decreased level. Only 480 Russian soldiers have met their demise over the past 24 hours. However, the numbers in other categories did go up. Others went a little bit lower. We saw that 3 armored personnel carriers were destroyed over the past 24 hours. Not the highest number we've seen, but it's still 3 armored personnel carriers the Russians will not have. We also saw 2 tanks get destroyed and 13 supply trucks, which is above average and very nice to see. We also saw that entire 2 artillery batteries of artillery pieces were destroyed today, which is a good number, a little bit above average. We saw that 4 drones were also knocked out in MLRS and 2 Bobcat skid steers. And of course, the memes are abound.
Hey.
Hey! Oh,
What the
it's
hell
a real
is that?
Bobcat!
Oh, God.
Oh my God!
That
Let's see.
bobcat kind of looks like a pig mixed with like a bobcat.
Let's see. It kind of does, but I was looking at this one here, and this guy like showing his teeth to a camera.
Keith, you're actually correct. I am too young for that. I'm not sure what's going on with this.
Dude, call this man the Rizzler.
I don't know about that, but
Yeah, that's a little bit of a stretch. Oh, we can see a woman riding an old tractor from like the 1950s. This is from Smiley. Thank you, Smiley. And of course, well, actually, those are all the ones we had. Oh,
that was all.
can we please have more Bobcat? You know, but anyways, very nice to see all of these. That's actually a backhoe. But that's still, we're going to count that as special equipment. It is nice to see all of these little bobcat skid steers on fire, and we'd love to know that all of y'all enjoy that meme a whole great deal, to even keep it alive on Twitter.
Peter, the Twitter's here.
And so with that, we're now moving on from the loss report for today. Once again, not incredibly high, but it is average amongst most of the war's numbers so far. And we're now moving out of the location unknowns and on into the area of the northeastern front. Of course, we already went over Bakhmut to great detail, and there wasn't really any frontline advances or changes in the northeastern area, but we did see in the direction of Rubizhny a drone bombing happening to the Russians. I said happening. You know, one day I'll eventually learn how to speak this language I was born speaking, but here's the video. Oh, God. They got anime music playing or something. Anyways, we can see the explosion down there as the drone flies over, and we can see it again, this time in slow motion. And we can even see it in reverse. And then we can see the little explosion in the distance. Very, very nice. And always great to see that the Ukrainians are able to blow away Russians left and right with the drones. We're now going to be moving on from that little clip and behind the lines in the direction of Torske, where we saw some battlefield transportation.
Передавайте мамці привіт.
This is the Bliatmobile.
Мама знає, да? А дверь закрой, или ремнем
Close
хоть
the door,
пристегни.
Bliat. Oh, he tried. Oh, man.
And y'all know it. While these cars are straight garbage, they will run until the wheels literally fall off. It's a lotta.
Завелась. Т-800. Зато белый диск у него, ничего себе. Все, удачи, пацики. Навалите им там по самые помидоры.
We see a rear view mirror in action, which is just a guy looking out of the back of the car.
It barely has enough horsepower to get over a bump.
Yeah, it's got like 40 horsepower. The back trunk does not close either. We can see it just bobbing around back there. And they're on their way. Oh, fuck.
Yo.
Oh, man! But anyway, so you can see that a pimped out Bliatmobile just was bogged down in the mud. It's also, it looks like it's out of water for the radiator. You can now see, I don't know what this thing is. Is it a Toyota? Well, well, I guess we won't find out. We couldn't see the logo. But we see this thing's been knocked around a little bit.
Oh, oil everywhere.
Oil on the road. We can also see a Land Rover over there. And we can also see a burned out vehicle right here. They said, and the most unlucky. That's why. Do not be surprised when soldiers often collect money for cars. Yesterday,
buying them.
It was 3 car. Today, 0. Dude, everything is very intense near Bakhmut. It's all happened for just one night. Hey, man. Thanks for surviving. Oh, no problem, man. That's like, I guess. No problem, man. Maybe let's go to the basement. Shelling? Again? At this time of day? In such house, we live here.
I like that rug.
Here's the basement without stairs. So you just, like, go down the hole. So it's a one-way ticket there. I'll show you a tour of the house, and the neighboring house is ours. We are unbelievably lucky. So this is village 3 to 4 kilometers from the front line. And that's the end of the clip. Of course, it is Roman. Yes, some people said, that's Roman! It is Roman. I just didn't make any mention of it. But still, as you can see right there, there's some frontline transport from the Bliatmobile to the one that apparently ran out of steam in the middle of a field. You know, Matthew, when I saw this one, I was just thinking of that guy. You may have seen him on some of the memes where he's in that truck and he goes, oh, I put the delete kit in this thing. You know, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think I do.
You know, the guy
Yeah.
the guy who hits the horn, but it's not with his hand. You know, it's something else.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
When I saw the smoking Lada, I was thinking, oh yeah, I got the delete kit. But anyways, we're moving on from that clip, and we're now moving out of the northeastern area and past Bakhmut, since we covered that in the first thing of news tonight, and we're now going to be moving on down into Donetsk, and of course going over the frontline analysis here. So, over the past 24 hours, we have seen that Russian forces have been able to advance and create a I guess you could say, a more solidified front line along the road near Krasnoyarivka. They are still trying to create this wine glass-shaped front line down here in an attempt to either encircle Avdiivka or bypass it completely. And of course, the battle is still carrying on there. We got one video clip today of Ukrainians that were fighting in the forests outside of the town, and we heard a Russian vehicle pull up in the distance with a megaphone and start asking Ukrainian soldiers to surrender. As far as we know, no one surrendered. Here's the video.
Ну что-то слышно еще. Не слышно. Я тоже разобрать не могу.
Да, пидорская пропаганда, да.
Там что-то побратимы, там ваши сдаются все больше, и это...
Призывают нас сдаться.
Бросай оружие.
Бросай
Бросайте
оружие. Бросайте оружие. Ты собираешься сдаваться?
Нет, блядь. Солдатам, блядь, да?
Собираешься?
Нет.
По лицам я этих людей не вижу, чтобы они собирались сдаваться.
The fellows carrying sticks are going to ask the well-armed guys, do you want to surrender?
Это решили ему ответить.
Dude, they put together their last electronics in the entirety of the Russian Federation to make that megaphone just to ask them to surrender.
They can hang their comedy career up right now.
Americans, your country has abandoned you. It's best to give your information to the North Vietnamese by tonight, lest we pull out your fingernails.
Or something like that. And it's like, no. I like how everyone just answered the question so simply, too. They were like, you gonna surrender? No. It's like, nah, not even a chance. But with that, that's the end of that clip. And of course, the Russians are getting really desperate when they're literally pulling up the vehicle to the front lines and going, please surrender. And so with that, we're now moving on down towards the Pisky direction in the rear line near Pervo-Maiske. And I gotta say, if the Russians ever take this village, they're gonna be very Pervo in a way. But anyways, the clip is of some Ukrainian soldiers unpacking some presents that were so nicely sent to them from Iran. And so, here's the video. You see them moving around the wooden crates, with artillery exploding in the distance. And whipping out this Iranian shell, getting rid of the tape, opening up the top, getting the shell out.
How'd they get this from Iran?
They have their ways. I don't know. They have their ways. And that's the end of the clip. But 120mm mortar shells from Iran. And I thought they were Russia's friend, but every single day they show they're in it for the moolah. I don't even know how the hell they got it to Ukraine, but very interesting that the Ukrainians were able to buy and then use Iranian mortar shells. Well, that we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news in Pisky, and I guess you could say that the Iranians are Piskied off. And we're now going to be moving on down to Marinka, where we saw today that an Su-25 was shot down over the town on film. It's very rare to see aircraft shot down on film like this, but we saw one today. We can see them flying. We can actually see one flying a little close to the camera. And, any second now. Any second now, believe it. Poof! Uh-oh. Oh, no. And we see a little parachute falling right there. That Su-25 went down. He needs some milk!
He's going to need a lot more than that before it's over with.
He's going to need a lot. Also, I would like to thank Michael Bay for the fantastic aircraft explosion that for some reason, although it is real, it literally looks like they lined up a bunch of propane tanks and then just had them blow up. Like, look at this. You know, movie effects actually get pretty realistic when you think about it, and you look at an explosion like that. It's like, wow, they actually are not that far off.
Yeah, you know they use real explosives to do the movie stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah, I know. Absolutely, absolutely. And so with that, we're now moving on from that clip and on to the next one where we can see the streets below as fighting continues in the ruins of Marinka. As we can see, of course, the destruction is I guess you could say complete at this point. It's not like it getting worse. Most of the houses don't even exist anymore. And the Ukrainians and the Russians are still fighting over this very part of the city. Ukrainian squads and Russian squads are moving through this rubble from house to house, position to position, street to street, still engaging each other in firefights to try and control what you can't even really call a city anymore. It's more so of just a debris field. And with that, we're now going to be moving on to the next bit of news we got from Marinka, where we also saw a destroyed Ukrainian vehicle in Marinka, also showing how heavy the fighting has been. We don't know whose vehicle this is and who is filming. We see them driving through the destroyed city. Having to take the left turn here, and then getting back on the road. Continuing on, showing the destruction of the city. And that's the end of the clip. Oddly enough, I went and copied the title, and I watched about, wait a minute, I misread the title. There was no destroyed vehicle, it was just a destroyed village. It says location unknown, but then it was traced down to Marinka, and I watched the first 20 seconds of this clip before I put it up, and I sat there and thought, huh, I haven't seen a destroyed vehicle yet, I guess we'll see it here in a minute. Never saw it, and that's because there was no destroyed vehicle. It was just a destroyed village, which this is the, I guess you say, furthest west in Marinka, from what we were able to do with geolocating earlier. We're now going to be moving on south of Marinka and on into the fields behind, where we saw some Ukrainians in a trench preparing a drone for a combat mission. And they playing that piano. You now see them setting up the drone for flight. We now see them getting the grenade ready to go. Gently, gently. We now see them placing the drone in the pit. No, this is not a punishment for the drone. The drone does enjoy the pit. And we now see the drone dropping the bomblet onto a Russian position, and the mission is complete. Very nice to see. Very happy to see it, as a matter of fact. And with that, we're now moving on from this bit of news in Marinka and the battle going on there, and we're now going to be moving on down into the direction of Volodar, where we saw the Ukrainians using the shoulder remover. That's right. If your shoulder is hurting, this thing will make sure that it hurts even more. This is, of course, the Snipex Alligator that uses a 14.5mm cartridge and has a silencer the size of a car's muffler. Oh, I thought that was someone talking, but that's actually someone singing. We can see them working on the alligator right here. And I wonder why they call it an alligator. Do they call it an alligator because if this thing hits a Russian soldier, it starts like, it grabs his arm and just starts spinning in a circle until it peels it off or something? I don't know. But it's still...
They probably call it an alligator because nobody can handle it. The thing's huge. How do they transport that?
I don't know, but let's pull up the weight of a Snipex alligator again. I feel like it's like got to be like 50 pounds. Snipex alligator. Interior crocodile alligator. I drive a Chevrolet movie theater. But let's see. 55 pounds, right on the dot. 55 pounds. It's heavy. It's 79 inches long. And I'm guessing that's without a suppressor. And it's 47 inches. The barrel length is 47 inches alone. So about twice the length of what's called a long rifle, which is around 20 to 21 inches of barrel length. So Huge rifle, absolutely massive. And the muzzle velocity on this thing isn't anything to be scoffed at either, as it's 3,200 feet per second of muzzle velocity. That is huge, because I think, let me think. M16s get like 2,100 feet per second. M4 carbines get like 1,500 feet a second. So this thing is doing the velocity of 2 M4 carbines combined.
And they use this to pick off personnel or try to hit like equipment.
They use it to hit personnel.
Is a round that large really needed?
Of course. Why?
I mean, rather than like, of course we love the largest rounds, but do you really like in a military sense, like for efficiency, actually need one that big?
Well, I mean, like, I would say, yeah, not necessarily for the damage it does, but because it's a heavier round, it's going to be less affected by wind over a greater distance. It's going to be less affected by the speed of the round because the round's larger, so it keeps up momentum, so it doesn't have as much of a drop. I could see a lot of reasons why. I don't know if those are the actual reasons why they use rifles of this caliber for sniping, but I could see a decent amount of reasons why I would use one for sniping. Probably just because the round's so much bigger, and therefore it won't be as, I guess you could say, dependent on weather conditions to get the right kind of accuracy.
Interesting.
And I see some
But
people...
just to be clear, I am in favor of larger rounds, but in a military setting, such a large gun with such a large caliber, it seems a little unrealistic. Like, couldn't the Barrett MRAD like suffice?
It could, but do they have them?
We should send them some.
We should. We should immediately. And so that's the end of that clip. And we're now going to be moving on from that clip. By the way, it's not a clip. It's actually a detachable box magazine. I'm just kidding. That had nothing to do with us moving on from that video clip. But we're now moving on to the southern front entirely, where we saw a claymore outside of a house. These were, of course, graciously lended to the Ukrainians by the United States. Of course, they're only borrowing them, so we should be able to get them back even after they're used. I'm just kidding. You can't get these things back after they're used. You now see them messing around with the controller. Or the detonator. I don't know the exact wordage for this. But they're messing with the controller. We'll call this the TV remote.
Dynamo, I think.
Man, that thing's a dynamo. Look at him go.
Заховайся звідти. Перевіряй. Все працює. Нема нікого. Так, присіли. Вогонь.
Oh, they're done. Oh, they did it.
Damn.
Dang, that thing sounded like a 500-pound bomb. Good lord, that thing blew up like a 500-pound bomb. Jeez. That thing's impressive. I didn't know claymores blew up like that. Because hell, the only thing I've seen, because I'm not really a big explosives person, more so into like rifles and artillery, but not necessarily explosives like these. So, the only thing I've gotten close to really watching or really studying a claymore well at all, and I hate to say it, is a video game like Call of Duty way back in the day. And they never made the explosions look that big in Call of Duty for a claymore. Those things were like little firecrackers pretty much when they blew up. But anyways, we're going to be moving on from that. Really crazy to see the kind of explosive power that a claymore really does have. And now I can see why they're such a devastating and feared weapon. With that, we're now going to be moving on from the southern front and that direction and on into Kherson, where we saw on the banks of the Kherson today, the Russians are mining the Dnipro River, but they're not mining for gold. They're putting down explosive mines in the banks of the river. We can see one guy doing that right there. You see him wading around the water, just pulling a mine, but actually two guys pulling a mine behind him. everyone's giving a completely different number on the ball bearings in the Claymore. I've seen anywhere in between 700 to 1,000 ball bearings in the Claymore. Maybe different per size, maybe different per model. You might need to get an upgrade package to also get the heated Claymore. That is nice to hold in your hands. But we can see them there playing around the water like little kids, just having the funnest time laying down mines into the sea. Well, really the river. We can also see some other guys here that we haven't seen until this part of the video. So it appears as a whole of army approach to put the mines down in the water. We are doing a whole of Russia approach to mine the left bank of the Dnipro River. We're working all out around the clock to make sure that this can get done, and we thank everyone for their cooperation. That's the end of the clip, but you can see them all having a fun time in the river. And so with that, we're now going to be moving out of the Kherson area, of course, no frontline activity to speak of, and up into the area of I need to get this name right. Kropivnitsky, where we heard that a bot farm was seized, and that may be why we haven't seen so many bots getting in our chat tonight. Yes, sir. The SBU went in, and they took him down. I gotta say, love to see it. Love to see it. Call them out. Call them out.
Look at that.
Oh, look
all
at that.
Those bots.
Oh, so many of them. Not harassing us anymore. Any longer. We're free, Matthew. We're free. And so with that, great news to see. And we're now going to be moving on from the bot farm being closed down and on into the area. And this is actually was saved for the last thing tonight, because while it kind of should have been covered earlier, it is a little graphic. Not incredibly graphic. It is, of course, it's not anything that's going to get this stream age restricted, but it does show some stuff that's been blurred out that are war crimes by the Russian army back when they broke through the E40 Zhytomyr highway around Kyiv and started working their way towards Vasilkiv to the south of Kyiv. This was caught on video evidence. It had not been released up until now, and I thought I would show this to y'all because while this stream always tries to keep a light and positive tone about the war to make sure to keep people, not freaked out about it, but, interested and involved in it. Things like this, of course, do happen. And I think it's very important to point this stuff out because it's the reason why the Ukrainians are still fighting to this day. It's not just a war for the hell of it. It's a war really to save Ukraine itself and the people who live within Ukraine from having fates similar to these. And so with that, here's the video of what the Russians did to civilians on the Zhytomyr highway. Of course, I want to make it clear that this is being shown for educational purposes, not, for any other reason, because I think it's very important to let people know what the Russians really do to civilians in occupied areas or wherever the Russian military may be. And so with that, here's the video.
Like this is surely you can see the
Ото.
part of the armor tank which was standing here. We can see the digging hole. We can see the food.
А це хто?
Жінки і чоловіки складені на кучу і спали. Nice. Вот almost.
Я думаю, что это, скорее всего, наш.
That's the end of the clip, but I thought it was very important to show once again because these kinds of atrocities are terrible to think of. And it's not just single atrocities like trying to just exterminate Ukrainians that they find. It's the fact that they went out into the woods and they found that apparently the woman that was taken off the road and into the forest may have been violated as well, and then the fate of the child is completely unknown. And the child may have been watching all of this occur and is now probably within Russia somewhere and being forced to make uniforms for the Russian army in some small building in some unknown town. And so with that, that's the end of that clip again. Hopefully the Russians will be found who committed all of these crimes and held accountable. But, of course, that's fairly difficult, and they may already be dead at this point in the war, so they may never be held truly accountable for the crimes they committed rather than their death on the battlefield. With that, we're now going to be moving on into Kyiv, as of course it is time for us to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 408 of the war in Ukraine. And so, without further ado, here's the speech. Speech!
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці. Сьогодні насичений день, перша ставка. Основна увага боям за Авдіївку і Бахмут, за Луганщину, за кожен із тих напрямків, де ворог намагається зламати оборону всієї України. І я дякую кожному солдату, сержанту, офіцеру і генералу, які протистоять цьому, які здобувають Україні стійкість всій державі, саме там, у боях, у найгарячіших точках передової. На ставці доповідали командувачі напрямків, главком, розвідка, окремо підготовка нових бригад, постачання боєприпасів і зброї у війська. Друге, апарат РНБО разом з урядом, разом з міністерствами готує новий потужний санкційний список осіб, які працюють на агресію. Вони будуть заблоковані. Третє, провів тривалу нараду щодо енергетики, питань як стратегічних, розвитку і захисту нашої енергосистеми за будь-яких умов, так і поточних питань про енергозабезпечення наших людей і українського бізнесу. Четверте, в офіційне життя нашої держави додаємо нову традицію поваги. Сотні тисяч мусульман України і мусульманська спільнота світу, різні держави, різні народи у період священного Рамадану дотримуються суворого посту. Коли сідає сонце, відбувається іфтар, вечеря. В Україні це шанується всюди і навіть на передовій, навіть в умовах боїв. Кримсько-татарський народ шанує Рамадан. Повага завжди має бути обопільною. Тож від цього року щорічно в Україні за участі глави держави буде проводитись такий спеціальний захід поваги. І сьогодні вперше в Кримсько-татарському культурному центрі світ має знати, повернуться в міжнародні відносини повага і порядок лише тоді, коли у Крим повернеться український прапор, коли там буде свобода, так само, як і всюди в Україні. Мав честь нагородити наших воїнів, українських мусульман, які б'ються разом з усіма у силах оборони України. Мав честь розділити іфтар з нашими воїнами, представниками меджлісу, усією українською мусульманською спільнотою. І хочу подякувати усім у великій мусульманській спільноті світу, хто підтримує наш принцип. Принцип про те, що нікому не дозволено агресією руйнувати мир, який усім на землі дарований Богом однаково, який цінує кожен народ так само, як ми в Україні. І п'яте. Підписав сьогодні кілька указів про відзначення державними нагородами наших воїнів. 771 боєць. Воїни механізованих бригад, штурмових бригад, тероборони, наші зенітники, тактична авіація, артилерія, розвідбати, інженерні бригади, танкісти. Загалом за час повномасштабної війни більше 43,5 тисяч наших захисників і захисниць відзначені державними нагородами. Я дякую всім, хто боронить державу, слава усім, хто зараз в бою заради України. І вітаю усіх, хто сьогодні святкує Благовіщення. Молимося за перемогу наших воїнів і порятунок усіх наших людей від зла окупації. Слава Україні!
And so with that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky, and that rounds out our news summary for tonight. Of course, I thank you all so much once again for watching this news segment. If you did enjoy, make sure to hit the like button, as we're up to 1,474 likes, which means that we're finally about to discover the Americas for the first time. If those likes were a year number, once we reach 1492, all of the things that made America exist today will start to go into effect. But still, another thing I'd also like to say is that to all of our viewers tonight, I hope you all have had a Good Friday, both just a Good Friday as a day and a Good Friday as the actual holiday itself. It appears that a large amount of the Lee Spring Army has been out today and is still out at this moment celebrating Good Friday in one form or another. And to all of y'all who may be watching this stream on replay later who were off having a Good Friday, I hope you all had a good one. And I also hope that y'all join us on Sunday for the Easter Sunday fundraiser, because Easter is of course just around the corner and will be happening on Sunday. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on into the questions segment, and we're going to be addressing all the polls first, and then all of the all of the super chats after that, and then all of the live chats. I'm sorry, for some reason, I feel like as this keeps on going, my presentation gets less polished. I don't know. Maybe y'all can tell me, is it getting better or worse with how I'm talking? Because in my opinion, it's getting worse. Andy says the same. I feel like it's getting worse. I don't know why, but also really quick. No, never mind. I had nothing. I went blank. Anyways, with that, let's get to the polls.
All right, so we have 4 polls to address, and the very first one says, Slovakia says that the MiG-29s headed for Ukraine were sabotaged by Russian technicians, and what are your thoughts? 56% said not good, and how could that happen? 9% said unsure, 29% said it's bad but not devastating, and 6% said it's fine and it's no trouble at all. Now, I think it is troublesome that the planes were sabotaged, because that's something Ukraine's going to have to fix before they can use them. And my question is, why were Russian technicians working on MiGs that Slovakia was sending? That doesn't seem to make any sense. They might not have had direct connections to the Kremlin, but just the mere fact that Ukraine's at war with Russia, it seems not wise to let Russians work on their planes. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would also have to agree. One thing I was thinking, though, is that the Slovakians probably hired these people to work on the MiGs, and they sat there and thought, well, they may be Russians, but, they're not in Russia, and then they sabotaged them anyways. In my opinion, I wouldn't have allowed them to work on the aircraft, because if you're associated with a country that you're sending these planes to go and fight against, I feel like they probably would have a higher chance of doing something to the aircraft. So don't know why they allowed them to work on them, and I would have to say that that's not an unexpected result when Russians work on MiG-29s that you're sending to a country that is fighting the Russians right now. And so with that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And the second poll says, China just announced moments ago that military exercises, which will encircle Taiwan amidst blockade fears, are going to happen in the next few days. And what are your thoughts? 54% said it's just a China pressure tactic. 33% said it's likely not an exercise and something else. 7% said unsure. And 6% said it's probably just intense training. Now, it would be a pretty big leap to say that it's something rather than an exercise. But we also said that about Russia building up forces around Ukraine. They also claimed they were doing an exercise. It's just training. And then they ended up invading from pretty much every side. I fear that this could be something close to that. China is very upset right now. They are very, very upset that the Taiwanese president came to the U.S. and met with our Speaker of the House. And I don't know. I don't want to sound like I'm fear-mongering here, but the fact that they're encircling it and they're getting a lot more aggressive, that's not a good sign. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I believe I may have misheard the poll. The United States is conducting a naval exercise around Taiwan, or China is?
China is encircling Taiwan in a military exercise.
Let me pull that up real quick. Chinese military exercise. Push-ups, more like. Tuesday, August 2nd, 2022. Let's see. Chinese military stages large-scale military exercises. That was on January 9th of 2023. And, let's see here. Let's look at this one. This one's from Reuters. And hopefully, China began 3 days of military exercise around Taiwan on Saturday to express anger at the president meeting with the Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives, as the island's defense ministry said it would respond calmly. The drills, announced the day after Tsai returned from the United States, have been widely expected after China condemned the meeting with Speaker of the House in Los Angeles. China views democratically governed Taiwan as its own territory and has never announced a use of force to bring the island under its control. Taiwan's government, also known as the Republic of China, strongly objects to China's claims. I will. You know what? I've got to make this clear. I'm going to keep calling Taiwan the Republic of China because the amount of people who are woefully ignorant about Taiwan officially being called the Republic of China is astounding and also alarming at the same time, and shows that some people may not even know why this whole tension in between Taiwan and China exists, considering they don't know what they're officially called and the history behind where we are today with this situation. But anyways, said it started the Combat Readiness Patrol and Joint Sword exercise around Taiwan, having said earlier it would be holding them in the Taiwan Strait and to the north, south, and east of Taiwan as planned. So that's literally everywhere. That is encircling the entire island. Because the Taiwan Strait's to the west, and then they name out every single cardinal direction you could be in rather than west. So that is encircling them. Let's see. Independent separatist forces. It said Taiwan's monitoring the situation, maintaining a high degree of vigilance, and would respond appropriately to defend the island's security. China was using Tsai's U.S. visit as an excuse to carry out military exercises, which has seriously damaged regional peace, stability, and security. Or has it? Let's see. The military will respond with a calm, rational, and serious attitude, and will stand guard and monitor in accordance with the principles of not escalating nor disputes to defend national sovereignty and national security. So, it appears that this is the case. According to the Chinese, they are going to be to the north, the south, the east, and then in the Taiwan Strait over here, so they are completely encircling the island with this military exercise. In my opinion, that would be quite concerning, because why in the world is their navy encircling a whole island for no other reason than an exercise? That has some kind of a... Though that certainly has a connotation behind it, or at least an implied threat. Or it may actually be their attempt at pre-positioning their forces for an invasion or a war. One thing we
also something real quick, don't mean to interrupt, but I just saw that apparently some fighter jets or some kind of Chinese aircraft have been seen going toward Taiwan. I'm not sure if they entered their airspace or their zone or anything, but it appears that there's some aircraft airborne right now.
Interesting. We'll try and keep an eye on that and see if anything develops of that. But another thing I have to say, and I've seen some people saying this, Ty Andrew says, just a cotton pick a minute. They wasn't always called the Republic of China. Oh, they were. And let me explain. Republic of China. So, this is the Republic of China, as many people may know it if you ever read it, if you ever read history about East Asia. The Republic of China existed with two separate flags. This one, which I believe later on went on to become the flag of Manchukuo, which was a puppet state in the East, like the East Asian co-prosperity sphere that the Japanese created before the Second World War. And this is the flag that many people would know today as the flag of Taiwan, and that was actually the flag of the Republic of China. The Republic of China existed during a very weird time where China was kind of divided up amongst the warlords. This area out here was not actually controlled by the Republic of China per se. It was actually controlled by a warlord and was known as Shen Kang. And there were also many other warlords that controlled a large part of Western China. The Republic of China would really control everything in Manchuria and most of the East Asian coastline, where a lot of the Han Chinese, which are I guess you could say the largest cultural group in China, still live to this day. They would later on, after the Second World War, because they were actually the ones who fought the Japanese for the most part in China, was the Republic of China. The Chinese Civil War would begin right after, from 1946 to 1949, where the communists, led by Mao Zedong, would take over Manchuria because the Soviet Union actually held Manchuria at the end of the Second World War and then handed it over to the Chinese the Communist Chinese, very reluctantly. That gave the Communist Chinese, led by Mao, a massive advantage in the Civil War and allowed them to take over the entirety of mainland China. Also due to the widespread corruption under Chiang Kai-shek, the inefficiency of the Nationalist Army was greatly worse off than it was of the Communist Chinese, and so they would eventually collapse in power and also their land holdings over all of mainland China until Chiang Kai-shek and his government, called the Kuomintang or the KMT, they would flee to the island of Taiwan. So the
You said Shanghai Shrek.
Shanghai Shek, and he was so corrupt in the Second World War that many American observers and I guess you could say contractors and people like that who ever went into China and dealt with the KMT at the time actually nicknamed Shanghai Shek as Cash My Check, because anyone who paid him, he would pretty much do anything that anyone paid him to do. So he was actually known as being pretty corrupt at the time. But he would flee to the island of Taiwan, where the KMT and the Republic of China would live on till this very day. So they have been called the Republic of China ever since the Qing dynasty collapsed in 1912, and they've been here ever since. It is called the Republic of China, and if you look... say what?
Go ahead.
If you look at their official name of Taiwan, their official name is the Republic of China. I'll try and pull up... Let me just type this in. Republic of China website. Let's see, the Chinese central government. Let's see. I don't know. That's the People's Republic of China. Okay, good. We know that. Ministry of Foreign... Taiwan.gov. Welcome to the official portal website of the Republic of China. And this is on the Taiwanese government's website, is that they call themselves the Republic of China. You can see right there, government portal of the Republic of China, and then in parentheses, Taiwan. So they're on the island of Taiwan, but the actual country that exists on the island of Taiwan is the Republic of China. So I hope that addresses that fairly well. And then Tyann said, so it wasn't called that before that in 1910? No, because it was a whole different country. That's like saying the Weimar Republic was Nazi Germany. No, those are two totally separate countries, pretty much, run by two totally separate governments. So, yes. It is actually called the Republic of China. The China that everyone knows today, that everyone just calls China, is called the People's Republic of China. It's kind of like the difference in between the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, which everyone calls North Korea, and the Republic of Korea, which is called South Korea by most people. It's kind of like that difference. It's kind of like a weird wordage thing, but this is the Republic of China. So after going through all of that, that would be my opinion. It's very concerning and not really a good look, especially for the Chinese, that they're conducting a quote-unquote military exercise where they pretty much encircle the entire island with their navy. So with that, I hope that addresses that poll fairly well and also gives a little bit of history as to why Taiwan is officially called the Republic of China. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Man, that was some good history. If they got to go up against the Shanghai Shrek, they could be in trouble. But anyways, they're going up against Winnie the Pooh, so that's a little less intimidating. But the next poll we have says, Macron hoped to convince Xi Jinping to bring Russia to its senses, and was that a realistic goal? 62% said no, that goal is unrealistic. 29% said it was a good attempt. 5% said unsure, and it looks like 3% said yes, France has leverage with China. And on this one, I think that goal was very unrealistic. First off, Russia is never going to come to its senses because it doesn't really have any in regard to Ukraine. And China doesn't have that much leverage over Russia to be able to make them come to senses they don't have. So completely unrealistic. I'm not really sure why the guy has done what he's done with China. Like I said yesterday, it kind of comes off as selling out. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that the Chinese have some economic leverage over the Russians, considering they're really the only trade partner the Russians have left that buy their natural resources. So I think that it's possible for the Chinese to really start to draw the Russians into their economic sphere, because really the Russians have no one else to turn to sell their raw materials to. But that would be my opinion. I guess we're on two opposite ends there. But with that, I hope that does address the poll fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
Well, my thing is this. If the Western sanctions haven't brought Russia to its senses, that's a very strong financial incentive to come to your senses. If that hasn't done it, there's no way that Xi is going to put indirect pressure on Putin through Macron to, stop the war. I just don't think that's possible.
Oh, well, yeah, in that term, I would say it's not possible. I've got to be honest with you, I didn't really hear the poll that well because I was looking at the live chat. So I was trying to, answer it off of, the relation in between Russia and China's trade. But I don't know how in the world Macron expects to do anything through China. I would have to agree with you on that. So with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our last poll says the Wall Street Journal journalist was formally charged with espionage, and there's no sign of his release. And what are your thoughts? 84%, overwhelming majority, said he's not getting out anytime soon. 8% said unsure, 4% said I'm mixed on it, and 4% said he will be released soon. And I have to agree with the 84%. It doesn't look like he's getting out anytime soon, unless the U.S. offers up some very, very appealing options to trade for him. I doubt he'll be getting out at all. And, you know, while I want the guy out and he's being held wrongfully in Russia, this is a good example of why you don't go to foreign countries and, you know, basically stab them and expect them not to do anything in return, even if Russia is in the wrong. That was very unwise to publish that article while still living in Russia. But hopefully he does get out soon. But Enforcer, what say you?
Well, I would first have to say happy birthday to Gregory Pinnock because it just turned to 11 o'clock. So it is now his birthday. Happy birthday to Gregory. I made sure not to forget because a lot of people in the live chat were like, it's his birthday. I was like, oh yeah, it is. It is. So happy birthday to Gregory. I hope you're going to have a great birthday. And also thank you so much for being on the stream and watching it while it is your birthday. And I hope you enjoy all of the birthday wishes from the entirety of the Lee Spring Army. Now, getting to the poll, I would have to say it was not wise to publish an article like that about the Russians while living in Russia because you know they're going to come for you because you're already saying in the article they're not great people, they're very corrupt, and then you're expecting these not great people who are very corrupt to not do anything to you, and then they did. So hopefully he can get out, but I feel like that was a bad decision on his part to publish a negative article about the Russians while being in Russia. That's one way to guarantee you'll get into prison. It's kind of like going to North Korea and tearing down a propaganda poster and then expecting nothing to come of it. You know, you're in North Korea. They hate Americans. They're going to come for you. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And I actually saw someone, Matthew, I have to pull this up. They said the Republic of China's passports actually say Taiwan on them. So Taiwan passport. I have to see that because if it does, I'd be interested to see. So it does say Taiwan. They are correct. That is what a Taiwan passport looks like.
That's an interesting design.
But this one right here, wait a minute, hang on. It says the 2021 e-passport. This one does say Republic of China below it and then Taiwan. And this one also says Republic of China. But they
what
are
does that mean again?
That's the name. That's the official name of the country. It's like the United States of America. Instead of calling it America, it's called the United States of America. It's kind of like a similar thing with the Republic of China or calling it Taiwan.
Ah, okay.
But yes, you are correct. The redesigned one does have Republic of China removed from it, but it is still technically the Republic of China, parentheses Taiwan passport. But good point. The redesigned one does have Republic of China removed from it. So with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And I like how, like on the Taiwanese passport website, it said apply for a passport and it said in parentheses Taiwan, like you got confused for a minute. But anyways, our next super chat goes to Enforcer for President once again. And thank you very much for another $50 donation and helping to keep us running. And thank you very much. Enforcer for President says Enforcer and Enforcer Matt, why don't we make parachutes clear instead of hello, here I am, white? LSA for life, flashback for life, Slava Ukraine, and Ukrainian defenders.
And thank you so much for the support. And also, Flashback is a really great channel. We've actually plugged him on the stream before, and he's been doing great work out there. He's on the front lines, and he actually interviews soldiers. It's an impressive channel, and I highly recommend subscribing to him and watching him if you haven't. Moving on from that, I also have to thank you so much once again, Enforcer for President, for helping us to keep this channel running, also voting for me once again as president in 2040. Hopefully I'll be a good president. Hopefully I won't be as exhausted as I am now. But still, can you reread it again just to make sure I covered everything, Matthew?
Yes, and it said, why don't we make parachutes clear instead of hello, here I am, I'm white.
I don't know why. I feel that making them clear is probably expensive, and so we make them where they're not clear, so that way they're cheaper. I haven't actually heard of a clear parachute. Let me see if I can pull one up. A clear parachute. It doesn't look like there are a lot of them. Nope, we didn't want to shop. We want images. It doesn't look like there's a lot of them that are perfectly clear. So I'm guessing the fabric that is clear, but also has the strength to be able to hold up to parachuting, just doesn't really exist. From a guesstimate, of course, I don't exactly know, and I know that someone's going to be in the comment section after this becomes a video going, "If you don't know, don't say anything." Like, I got to give some kind of answer. I just can't declare ignorance on everything. So I guess that there is no technology that can make the fabric clear at this moment. So with that, I thank you for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And thank you once again, Enforcer for President, for helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Marion Deemert, who puts in a $20 donation. Sadly, no comment to address, but Marion, thank you very much for always helping to keep us running, and we do appreciate it very, very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I thank you so much for the support. Of course, you didn't leave a comment, but you did support this channel, and I thank you so much for enjoying this channel so much that you would find it worth supporting. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope we addressed that fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Psyops, who puts in a $10 donation and says, oh, let's see. You know, this seems completely innocent, but Psyops can make something innocent seem sketchy sometimes. So I'm sending this over to the Enforcer for review.
And it is currently in review. Let's see. It's interesting. I don't know what to make of it, really. They are riding Shetland ponies. Aim low. Real animal, Matt. I know. Hey, Matt! I found your pants. Look up the CCTV building in China, please.
He found my pants because he's in the CCTV building in China?
Let's pull up the CCTV building in China. Oh.
Oh, dear.
Oh,
that looks ominous.
Dear. Dude, that thing's
that looks
ugly.
fake.
That thing looks stupid, really.
Is that real?
Yeah, that's real.
Huh, that's looks like it's been like photoshopped into that.
Let's see. It was completed in 2012. It took him 8 years to build this thing. Yikes.
The owner is China Media Group. I wonder who that could be.
Honey.
Yes.
Peter, the communist government's here.
Let us build a massive, beautiful building for the communist government. But still, very interesting building. It's a 51-floor skyscraper, so it's not really that tall, but it is certainly wonky, very weird, if you ask me. But still, I thank you so much for the support, Psyops, and helping this channel to keep on running. I don't know what the Shetland ponies part means, but with that, thank you once again. I hope we addressed that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
I personally like the way Deepest Tempest put it about the building. He said, "Man, that's an ugly-ass building."
Oh,
I gotta agree. It is quite ugly.
But the ugliest building is the FBI building. It's the ugliest building. It's the ugliest building.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's hideous.
Let me go to the images. It just makes me want to throw up. Ew. It's so
Why'd
ugly.
they have to do it to him?
I mean, yikes. It's terrible looking. And remember the stupid explanation they gave you. Say, there are different height restrictions in different parts of the District of Columbia, and so this part of the building could be built taller, but this part of the building couldn't be. So they just decided to, split the building down the middle. It's like, why? Why? That was just
I decided to make it short to keep with the height restrictions and very ugly.
Very, very ugly. Too ugly. It's bad. It's terrible. Ew. Anyways, with that, we are on to the next one. But thank you once again for support, Sipes. And I hope you got that. I hope you enjoyed that little bonus of us looking at the J. Edgar Hoover building.
Peter, J. Edgar Hoover's here.
But with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $12 super chat from Margaret Hemsley, who says, "Will be missing streams? Maybe, as I road trip to Adelaide. Money for Fun Fund. And would love to see your faces again. Maybe for a combined birthday stream, ?
Oh? Combined birthday stream. And I thank you for the support, Margaret. And also, I hate that you'll be missing the streams, but I hope you have a fun time on that road trip to Adelaide. And thank you for the fun. We always enjoy having fun. We don't really have a lot of time for fun, so we always make sure to save up for the fun. And then once we finally get to the time for the fun, we don't really have fun. We just sit at home and kind of chill because we're usually tired. But still, we would love to do another podcast, an in-person podcast. The problem is that right now with college, the time just doesn't really exist for that unless if we gave up a Ukraine war news live stream and did it that way. And I know, and Matthew has said this, and I know that some people will also say this. Why not just do a Ukraine war live stream like this, but with us on the set? And the problem is that we wouldn't really be able to cover any news whatsoever because the two mediums are just completely not usable with each other. I wouldn't be able to get through the news quick enough, and I also would be focusing too much on switching cameras to actually cover news effectively at all and keep a proper train of thought. So we can't really do one right now, but we can do one once school is over, and that should be just in a few weeks. College ends in several weeks, and we'll be finally graduating. Both of us will. I'll finally be a bachelor in history, which will not stop the haters from saying I'm only 21 years old, but, they can be jealous because I guess they haven't done anything in life at all, so they're like, oh, the 21-year-old. But anyways, with that, I thank you so much once again for the support, and we will be trying to do one of those podcasts in the future. Hopefully soon, hopefully within the next 2 months or so. And so with that, we're on to the next one, and thank you so much once again for the support.
All right, and up next, we have a super chat from Styops once again. He puts in a $10 donation and says, if you find a fork in the road, pick it up. Yogi Berra. I think he might have meant to say Yogi Bear. I don't know. He says, look up Yogi Berra for some fun quotes. Might want to look that up on the second screen.
Yeah. Yogi, and then the second part is spelled like a bear with an A at the end of it.
And no, it's Berra.
Let's see. Let's see here. So here's 50 quotes by Yogi Berra. Hey, Babu, what are you putting in that picnic basket? when you come to a fork in the road, take it. You can observe a lot by just watching. It ain't over till it's over. It's like deja vu all over again. No one goes there nowadays. It's too crowded. Baseball is 90% mental, and the other half is physical. A nickel ain't worth a dime anymore. Always go to other people's funerals, otherwise they won't come to yours. We made too many wrong mistakes. Congratulations, I knew the record would stand until it was broken. You better cut the pizza in 4 pieces because I'm not hungry enough to eat 6. You wouldn't have won if we'd beaten you. I usually take 2-hour nap from 1 to 4. Never answer an anonymous
letter. Who's this
letter.
guy? Who is this guy?
I don't know. Slump. I ain't no slump.
Everybody's acting like we should know who this is.
How can you think and hit at the same time? The future ain't what it used to be. I tell the kids, somebody's got to win. Somebody's got to lose. Just don't fight about it. Just try to get better. You know, I feel like I
got the Rodney Dangerfield voice.
Dude, I
feel perfect with
it. Oh, man, I'm telling you. I get no respect around here. It gets late early out here. Oh, man, if the people don't want to come out to the ballpark, nobody's going to stop them. Oh, man, we have a deep depth. Oh, man, to pair up in the 3s. Oh, man, I'm telling you. When you buy good luggage, you only use it when you travel. Oh, man, and I'm telling you, it gets worse from there. You got to be very careful if you don't know where you're going, because you might not get there. Oh, man, all pitchers are liars and crybabies. Oh, man, even Napoleon had his Watergate. Oh, what the hell is that supposed to mean?
Wait a minute. Listen, this bot right here went off. It's Lewin VB. He says, who cares about Yogi? This is garbage reporting.
What?
This is the question segment, you goof.
It's the question. You know what's funny is that I actually saw someone last night while I was going through the comments. And, because I go through the comments, I have to go through them because YouTube won't stop harassing us unless I look through our comments on our videos. So I went through them, and then I saw someone who said this. It was hilarious, and I was like, I don't even get it. They sat there and said, and this was after my whole speech last night about we run this thing for the Ukraine war fundraisers. That's all we really aim for, is to make the fundraisers as good as they can be. Everything else comes second. This is too much about you. I was like, what the hell do you mean? It's like, I've literally been spending 60 hours a week for 408 days, 6 days a week, to support Ukraine. What the hell do you mean? Like, I didn't get it. And that's something of a lie that's been propagated by a certain person out there, which is kind of weird considering that if it was all about me, wouldn't I not be running sponsors? Oh, well, not sponsors. Wouldn't I not be running fundraisers? You know, it's like if it was all about me, I wouldn't run fundraisers. We, make everything about the fundraisers because it's about Ukraine. But anyways,
It's all about me. It's all about I. It's all about number one.
but with that, I thank you so much once again for support. I hope you enjoyed us looking at Yogi Berra. And with that, we are on to the next one. And also, I saw underscore say haters. Yeah, they are haters. I've kind of boiled it down to this at this point. The haters hate us for several reasons. One, because we're 21. Apparently, doing something at 21 is a big problem to a lot of people, because that seems to be the number one complaint that all of our haters have, is that I'm only 21. And that's hilarious to me, because the one thing you'll hear in this country, in the United States, is, I wish the youth would step up and do more than sit on their ass and play video games all day. And then when a 21-year-old gets off their ass and just goes all out doing something, then everyone who's who's older than 21 wants to tear them down. That's one group of haters. Another group of haters says that I have no military experience, or I'm stolen valor, one or the other, which we've never made the misconception that we were in the military. I've made it very clear from the start I'm a history major. That's really what we work off of. I don't work off of military experience because I've never had it. Or I work off of the stories of veterans. And those are, really honestly, there's many groups, but that's really what the two groups come down to. And I'm like, why? It's like, yeah, I'm 21 and I've had no military experience, but there are a lot of people who cover the war in Ukraine that have not had military experience. It's like,
well, look, don't feel bad, because today some guy who's actually been on the Twitter page for a while, he figured it'd be a nice thing to come into the Twitter comments and say, yeah, you're obviously young, you're too naive and stupid to know that this could be disinformation. I mean, my thing is this. It's like, we report the news. It's like sometimes there's stories that we don't necessarily agree with that we have to say because it's the news, and we'll discuss it later. But when you have to start resorting to insults to get your point across, it's like, why? It's like they're just disgruntled.
Yeah, I never take it. I don't take it personally, but it just I think I've never really conveyed this well. Sometimes haters bash us. Whenever a certain YouTuber out there just decides on a whim to send their community against us, and regardless whether they want to make it sound like we started it, we completely ignored them after our year anniversary fundraiser, and then they decided to slander us and our content and then have their community attack us, and that's why we started riffing on them again and have not stopped. That does bring us down, because it's like, we're doing everything we can to save Ukraine, and, well, not save Ukraine, save as many lives as we can in Ukraine, and then someone's just going to sit there and stick their viewers on us. That does kind of bring me down a little bit. So many people would just believe crap like that. But with the normal haters, it just completely baffles me. When people say you're 21, it's like, yeah, it's like, would you rather me be dishonest like Vasquez and tell you I'm 30? Or, I've been on 90 deployments? Would you rather like that? Or would you rather like me to be honest and tell you, no, I don't have any military experience and I'm 21 and I'm majoring in history? I feel like it's better to be honest, but, if for some reason people don't like honesty, it's just bizarre.
Look, the best offense to anyone that ever says, "Oh, you're too young to understand," the best offense is, well, it should be really easy for you to defeat my argument. Then, if it's so juvenile and naive, then go ahead and knock it out in a couple sentences.
Yeah, you would think that they would, and then this one's always the funniest one, when people say we're wrong, but they don't explain how we're wrong. They just tell us that we're so wrong, and you can't believe how wrong you are. It's like, well, tell me how I'm wrong. It's like, we're like, that's.
Tell them.
That's, yeah, call them out.
Call them out.
I'm perfectly fine, and people don't get this. I'm perfectly fine with being wrong, but you have to explain how I'm wrong, because if you just sit there and go, what an idiot, you're so wrong, we are going to ban you because you're just sitting there and saying it and you're not helping us out. It's like, if I say something about a weapon and you go, you're wrong, here's why, I'll be like, oh, thanks. Or, if you say something like, you're wrong, here's why, and then you go over the terminal velocity of an unladen swallow, I might actually ask you, why is that relevant to anything? But I don't, I'm sorry, I don't mean to go on
this is a rant.
Yeah, a rant. I don't mean to go on a rant about this. It's just that it came up for a second, and I was like, man, that would clear up some fallacies maybe. But anyways, with that, With that, I was reading something from Jonathan Williams. I didn't start listening to you because I thought you were some old dude. Age has nothing to do with good content. Oh, well, Jonathan, for some people, age has everything to do with everything. I mean, like, you can sit there and be on top of your game and be completely bashed. You know, like, and when you think about it, throughout all of history, there's been a lot of people like that. You know, like people who were really young. And I'm not saying I'm a Napoleon or an Alexander the Great or anything, but really young and went out there and just busted themselves to just do everything they could and then some. And then all of their peers just couldn't stand them. Like, I'm not saying that I'm one of those people, though. I'm just a normal person. But, you know, it's like, what the hell? Anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to CK Bold, who puts in a $10 super chat, and he wants us to take a live chat question like usual. And thank you very much, CK, for the support like always, and we do appreciate it as always as well. And the live chat question goes to Snowy, who says, I keep seeing mentions of tunnels supplying Bakhmut, and have you seen anything?
And I still haven't. I've been trying to find the footage, the information about those tunnels. Can't find anything. And I understood when Soledar had tunnels because they have mines there, but there are no mines, as I understand it, in Bakhmut, or mine entrances in Bakhmut. There are tunnels that travel under Bakhmut from Soledar, but I don't think there's any mine entrances within Bakhmut itself for those tunnels to be viable. And anyways, they would terminate in Soledar because those are where the salt mines were. So, I don't really know. I have a feeling that they, in my opinion, because I haven't seen any proof about them, and, you know, of course, if they do exist, I'll just reverse the statement on this. But in my opinion, I just don't think they exist. Because we've heard this about everywhere. We heard this during the Battle of Severodonetsk and Lysychansk, that there were tunnels under both of them. And I always found that kind of weird that there somehow was a tunnel going under a river, and there wasn't any kind of drainage issues or water buildup issues when they're clearly under the water table in that area and under a river. So I was like, that's kind of weird, but I don't know. This time, I don't really feel like there are tunnels leading into Bakhmut. With Soledar, certainly. There was no doubt there were tunnels there that they were being supplied through. But with Bakhmut, I just don't really know. I feel like it's kind of a stretch. But with that, I thank you so much once again for asking a really good question. And also, I hope that we addressed that live chat fairly well. And thank you so much, CK Bold, once again, for sponsoring a live chat. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, if anybody on Twitter is watching the stream currently that's messaging me, I do see everyone's messages about apparently the planes in the air toward Taiwan. And sadly, I'll try to look at it in the background, but, you know, we will have to maybe save that for maybe later. But I will look at it. And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Psyops. Once again, and thank you very much, Psyops. He says, Dearest Enforcer, I require a certain task to be done. I need you to hop up, grab your phone, and take a picture of Mr. Corgi. I need some floof in my life. Justice for Mr. Corgi.
You know what? I think I could probably do that. Let me think about that. I wonder if he's in his... Yeah, he's in his cage right now for sure. It's like 11:30.
Man, don't get that dog up.
Yeah, I'm not going to get him
barking
up.
like crazy.
Yeah, I'm not going to get him up because he'll start going, woo, and he'll start crying like, come on, get me out of here. So, I would do it, but I can't. You know what? I'll actually take a picture I took of him a couple of days ago, and I'll put it on the Discord. Should that suffice, sir? I hope it does. So let me go grab it. And
I got a picture of Sheba that you can show as well.
Let's see. Let me see if I have another one.
Let's see. Give me just a second now. I'll get that picture of Sheba. Tired Sheba. Very tired.
Let's see. And
here.
then I'll put this one up. We're both searching for pictures of the dogs. Oh,
so sweet.
Oh, that's a cute picture. One second, let me get them all up on screen. Sadly, Matthew won't be able to see all of them on this screen. But there's Sheba. Y'all have never seen Sheba before. This is the Sheba reveal. That is Sheba right there. She's on our leather lazy boy that's like 35 years old right there. But she's loving every second of it. A very sweet dog. And then we'll move up to Mr. Corgi. This is Mr. Corgi again. There's Sheba right there. She's actually laying out like a bean. Very sweet, precious bean. And then in the top picture right here, I'm petting Monsieur Wilwerg on the floor. He's very cute. I love that dog. And then
Man,
Fuyuma said,
so sweet, so
and then,
sweet.
And then Fuyuma said, why are they caged? We put them in like resort-sized cages at night, so that way they don't go and pee on anything. Because Mr. Corgi actually has a tendency to mark things, you know, so he goes around marking stuff sometimes. So we don't want him marking stuff in the middle of the night. So we put them in massive-sized cages. They're like the cages that are for like dogs that are like 150 pounds, and then we took 2 of them and put them together, and so they live in like condominiums nearly when we put them in these cages. They're big enough for them to like literally like run in a little bit, but still precious dogs. I love these corgis so freaking much. I love them. And also, that was a great picture of Sheba, by the way, Matthew, and the first time anyone on stream has ever seen Sheba.
That's the Sheba reveal right there. The best picture I could find of Sheba, by the
way. She looks so solemn there, but she's smiling almost all the time. Except
she was so tired. She was so tired. She was on the recliner trying to take a nap. I was disturbing her by taking a picture.
Dude, she's looking at you like all hope is lost. She's like, there will never be a nap today. And she's like, this was a terrible day. But with that, I hope that satiates the hunger for corgi pictures of our corgis. I love my corgis till the day I die. We, oddly enough, found a weird piece of bread out in our front yard the other day. We don't know if anyone was trying to poison them or not. And then they ate it and then they lived. So we were like, we don't know where the bread came from. But, you know, we love the corgis.
But now we're watching them like hawks.
Yeah, now we watch them like hawks. We follow them around when they're out in the yard, so that way they don't eat anything like a weird piece of fish that somehow just found its way in the yard and is covered in arsenic or anything. But love those dogs till the end of my days. They're precious, and they're such a joy. Whenever you see them, you can't help but smile. I love those dogs too much. I can't even put it into words. But with that, thank you so much once again for support. Hope y'all enjoyed the corgi pictures. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And that picture of Sheba is the look that people will give before Taiwan's invaded.
Oh, by the way, real quick, I'm going to put in the chat how to spell Mr. Corgi and Sheba, because Sheba's name is not spelled with an E. Like, it seems like it would be spelled with an E. It's spelled with an I because me and my mom, which I call Mama, we named Mr. Corgi. And we came up with Mr. Corgi. Sheba was named by Matthew, and Matthew named her because when she was a puppy, she looked like a tiny miniature Shiba Inu from Japan, and so we called him Sheba, as in a Shiba Inu.
Yes, that's how the little Sheba got her name.
Yeah, and
also
then
she tried to get related to Doge, but not quite.
She was close to Doge. She's very close to Doge when you actually see her, but not close enough. So she got called Sheba. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $10 super chat from Carlos Garcia. And he says, you both are inspirational. It makes me want to try harder to achieve my long-term goals. Been watching since March of 2022, and this has been my routine. I missed your impersonation of Mike Tyson, and thank you. And also, thank you for the high praise, Carlos. That's very kind of you.
And thank you so much for the high praise. And I've got to say, Carlos, I not to downplay what we do or anything, Matthew, me, I consider what we do to be what folks should always do. If you ever feel like you wanted to do something, you just got to go out there and you got to do it. It's going to be a lot of hard work though, and it's not going to be sunshine and rainbows all the time. That's one thing we've learned doing this, is that sometimes it gets rough, it gets tiresome or something, but you just got to keep going. But I got to thank you so much for the high praise, saying that we're an inspiration. I don't really view ourselves as a massive inspiration to anyone or anything, but thank you so much for the compliment. That's a huge compliment. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support and being such a long-time viewer. You are a part of the old guard if you've been here since March of last year. And thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running and enjoying us so much that you find it worthwhile to support this channel. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
All right, and the next one goes to Psyops yet again. He puts in a $10 super chat and says, Fuyuma Master... Excuse me. Goodness. Whoa. But anyway, Psyops says, Fuyuma Masterpiece Song. Psyops and Enforcer Matt. Now, Psyops, you know I don't sing now. You know I don't. So, look, send this to the Enforcer, and he might sing along.
Oh, no. Man, Matthew's always throwing me under the bus because he knows I'll do it. Let's see. That's it. Oh, well, there's nothing really wrong with it, so we got to read it. Oh man, I know I'm about to get flamed for singing. Someone's about to go, Mandy, to the Mikado. I've got a little list. I've got a little list, and they're gonna say, I unsubscribe because he sung so terribly. But anyways, the weather outside is frightful. Orcs dying so delightful. As long as they win KO. Let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. That's that's absolutely terrible. You're not getting on American Idol that way. But what were you going, oh man, about? Was it that bad?
No, that was actually all right. I was about to say, Fuyuma needs to be a songwriter from now on.
Yeah, that's actually not that bad. Not that bad at all. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, PsyOps. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running.
All right, and up next, we have a $10 super chat from Jay Bagwell. And it's good to see you again, Jay. And he says, point of clarification, please. For your theory on Crimea ports being the crux for the war, Russia already had the port before the war, so obviously they bit off more than they could chew, and thanks.
And thank you for the support, Jay. And that is a good point. They did have the port, but the problem was, is that, and let me real quick go back to this. So, Ukraine, well, Sevastopol port. Port of Sevastopol. So let me go down here, and the port was leased to Russia on a long-term lease after the devolution of the Soviet Union in the early 90s. So they had port basing rights there, and were able to keep the Black Sea Fleet there and keep the maintenance and also maintain their own port facilities due to the lease of the port facilities. But when the Maidanhead Revolution happened and the Ukrainian government went from Russian-leaning to pro-European Union, the fear of the Russians was that through the Ukrainians entering the European Union, they would have to terminate the long-term lease that the Russians had on the port of Sevastopol to enter the European Union. So that scared them enough that they mobilized some forces and moved them into the Donbass and then backed some rebels with weaponry. And then they also rolled, I believe it was the 316th Separate Naval Infantry Brigade just out of the port facility, and then on into Crimea and just started annexing all of it. And then, of course, they made the Crimean Republic, which existed for 23 hours, actually, and then was annexed by Russia because it asked for statehood, somehow ran an election, and then had an overwhelming group of people say yes, all in 23 hours. But that is true. They did have the port before then, and that is the entire reason why they freaked out when the Maidan had happened, is because they thought that port and their port access rights may not exist. But a very good point of clarification, because they did have the Black Sea Fleet there before the war. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Jay. Also, we've sent you a Discord DM. I'm not sure to check you.
He's already responded. I just hadn't had the chance to read it yet.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, well, besides, I hope that addressed that fairly well. Thank you so much once again for the support, Jay. And by the way, I have been reading one of the books that you sent, well, actually you gave me way back last year. It is the Modern Firearms of the 20th Century book. And you know something interesting is that, and this was an interesting argument back in the day, and actually I went and agreed with everyone on this, but I think we all have to go back and reconsider this again, because one of the books that I was given was published in 1989 or 1990. It doesn't actually have the published date stated on it, but it talks about the reunification of Germany just happening several months before, and then also states here in the very near future, just within the next year in 1991, this will be happening. So it's sometime in between late 1989 and 1990 that this book was published. Nevertheless, it actually calls a lot of rifles in the book, a lot of automatic rifles, assault rifles. And that was something very interesting to me, because after the stream ended, whenever we all had the discussion about what is it called? Is it called an assault rifle, a rifle, or what? I went and pulled it up, and a lot of people came to the consensus that assault rifle was first used as a term in 1994, but this book was published sometime in between 1989 and 1990, and it was using assault rifle very commonly in that book. It appeared to have not been a new term, and it appeared to have been around the block for a good while. So it started to bring the question to me, is the history of where that word came from wrong, and has that word been around for quite a while? Because a lot of words have been around for a while, and they just kind of float around, and then people act like they're new, although they've been around for sometimes hundreds of years. Assault rifle, of course, probably has only been around for about 70 years after the Sturmgewehr, which is known as the storm rifle in German. So, and of course, not trying to make this a political thing or anything, because I know that that word has very strong political connotations in the modern world. But I was sitting there and looking at that book and reading, and I was like, that's weird, because it is several years before everyone agrees that that word was originally used for the first time, and it mentioned it about, from my count, 20 times in the book so far. So, with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. Also, Jay said Armalite. Yes, the AR is Armalite. Does not stand for assault rifle. The Armalite company was the company that Eugene Stoner worked for when he designed the AR-15. And interestingly enough, man, this is another cool story about the AR-15. The AR-15 existed before the M16 existed. The M16 was actually derived from the AR-15's design.
Oh, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, so the AR-15 is actually older than the M16 or the M4.
That is interesting. But also, you know, what else is interesting is something major right now is going on with Taiwan. It looks like 8 Chinese warships have just crossed the median line, and they're heading straight for Taiwan. 42 Chinese aircraft just crossed the median line. They're heading straight for Taiwan. And it looks like Taiwan is sending out their boats to intercept them. And it looks like the U.S. is moving ships and assets toward Taiwan as well.
Interesting. And they've crossed the median as in the middle of the Taiwan Strait, or have they entered regional waters of Taiwan?
The report says the median line, but that's a massive amount of aircraft. That is very large.
Taiwan, China. Let's go look at where the median line is. So this appears to be what they're calling the median line. So it's about, it's probably about 70 miles from Pinggu County. Let's go and try and measure that real quick.
It looks like from what I'm seeing, it looks like we're moving some ship. I'm not sure which one it is toward Taiwan. It's a couple hundred miles away. It looks like. Not really sure though. I need to find out what ship that is.
Interesting. We'll be keeping up to date on that situation. If anything starts to happen while this stream is live, we'll cover it as much as we can. But it appears that this is certainly an escalation in the Taiwan-Chinese affairs, at least, and may actually be going towards the direction of war, but we don't know for sure at the moment. So with that, we're going to be moving on to the next one, but I thank you so much once again for the support, Jay. I hope we addressed that fairly well. Really good point, by the way. That is true. They did pretty much have access to the port before the war. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, by the way, I'm not sure when those exercises were supposed to start. It looks like they might have started them early, because my impression was they were going to take place in a couple of days. I don't know, though. This seems like it might be a little bit more than an exercise. Also, Rob Eisman said the Nimitz group is 300 miles out. That might be the name I was looking for right there. So very interesting. I'm going to try to do some more research on that very quickly. But up next, big shout out to Jayburn, who puts in a $10 donation and does not leave a comment. But Jayburn, thank you very much for the support, and we do appreciate it very, very much. And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Santiago Flores, who says, "Good evening, and I love your analysis about Bakhmut, and I feel it's a Verdun Stalingrad for the Russian. Great works, and haters are haters. I'm building a MiG-29 MU-1 right now, and thank you."
Santiago, you are constantly building those little Lego things. Keep sending them to us, because we love to see them, though. Like, they've been cool every single time. And also, thank you so much for enjoying the comparison to Verdun, because I used to do it a lot back in the day, and I always try and make sure that we do things that folks will enjoy and enjoy listening to, and I'm glad that a lot of folks listen and enjoyed listening to that comparison of Bakhmut to Verdun. Of course, my big thing is World War I history. That's what I focused on a lot. And so it's always easy to draw comparisons in between World War I and this one, especially now that the front line has solidified. We've kind of gone through the War of the Frontier phase, and now we've entered the I guess you could say the war that people would think of when they think of World War I. So with that, thank you so much for enjoying that. And also, haters are haters, and they will do what they do. It's always baffling to me, and I always kind of like share my thoughts on how baffling some of their statements are, because it's like, who the hell comes up with this stuff, you know? Like, another thing that I've heard again is that apparently there was this moderator that was a part of our Discord during the schism that actually was a part of another channel this entire time that is now over there spreading a straight up lie that somehow we're stealing fundraiser funds through YouTube Give, which wouldn't make any sense because the other channel they're associated with only runs fundraisers through YouTube Give. So it's like, are you saying that they're doing that too, or are they innocent? It's like, and anyways, everyone knows how YouTube Give works, and it's YouTube Give, so they manage all the accounts and everything. It's like you can't even do anything with that. But it always baffles me when people come up with stuff like that, because it feels like critique like they don't like the way we deliver the news. It's like, yeah, that's a matter of opinion. But with stuff like that, it's like, if we knew where you live, we would sue you for slander, you know, because that's just a straight up lie. But anyways, with that, thank you for the support, and we're on to the next one.
All right, so some more information about Taiwan here. There are pictures coming out of the Chinese warships right off the coast of Taiwan. They're literally right on the coast. They're taking, it looks like tourists are taking pictures of the ships coming up. As well as they're apparently going to be doing a live fire drill or something of that nature here momentarily. So very interesting. I'm not sure what that means, a live fire drill right next to Taiwan. I'm not really sure what that means.
Do we have the pictures?
Yes, I can. Actually, it's on our likes. So if you go to our profile on Twitter and click the like, you'll see the picture.
Peter, the Twitter's here.
So let's see here. And we go to the likes. How do I get to the likes?
See tweets, replies, media, and likes. It's right there in the.
Oh, here we go. Likes. Let's take a look. Let's see, PLA Navy tugboat. This was on Friday. Sails in the Taiwan Strait past tourists. This is at Pingtan Island. Let's pull up Pingtan Island and find where that is. Pingtan Island in Fuzhou, China. So this is actually on the Chinese mainland.
Really? So
Yes.
it's not from Taiwan? Are you sure about that?
Well, I believe this island is owned by the Republic of China, but it's not Taiwan. It's not the island of Taiwan. Because this says right here it was like Pingtan Island, the closest point to Taiwan.
Okay, maybe I misread it. Are you sure though? Because it says sails in the Taiwan Strait past tourists on Pingtan Island, the closest point to Taiwan. So they reported it was going past this island on China's side?
Yes.
Okay, I just misread that then.
But it is
False
still...
alarm.
One second, I'll actually pull up a ROC map. And let me see if I can get one. Oh, okay, one second. Let me type it in.
RHC Corporate temporarily closed.
So let me get you a map of Republic of China. So let me go here. And here are the islands that they control. They control the Kinmen Island right here, which is right out of sight of Ximen. And I'll see if I can find that for you right here. So here's Kinmen County Island. This is actually owned by the Republic of China, and it's in the middle of Ximen Port. So that's actually owned by them. So if Chinese ships pass by Kinmen County, a news agency could say, "Oh my God, they're sailing up to Taiwan," because that's actually technically a part of Taiwan if you call the Republic of China Taiwan. So,
well, screw that then. That was all wrong.
Yeah, well, it's like, call them out. That's clickbait. That's call them out. They're freaking people out. Oh my. But anyways, we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to James Moon, who puts in a $5 donation and says, "Take one from the live chat." And James, thank you very much for that. And of course, we will take one from the live chat. And this one goes to Roger H., who says, "It shouldn't matter to Russia if NATO is in Ukraine. After all, it's just a special military operation and not a war, right?"
You're absolutely right. That's a good point. However, the Russians lie. They deceive people with their words, and they do that a lot. I remember, Matthew, the story from the neighbor about the Russian. Oh man, they do that a lot. Actually, they do that on a daily basis. But anyways, they don't. It's not a special operation really. They're just using that as a cheap word game. It is a war to them, and they would freak out if NATO entered Ukraine because that's the whole thing. They're fighting this war for us, so that way NATO isn't on their doorstep. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does answer that fairly well. But really, if they want to play the word game, it is just a special military operation. We should be able to go into Ukraine without any problem. And so with that, we're on to the next one. Thank you once again for the support.
All right, and up next, we have a $5 super chat from Borbula, who says, thank you for all of the hard work.
And thank you, Borbula, for enjoying our hard work. I thank you so much. And I also thank you so much for thanking us for doing what we do. We try our best, and I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on rolling so that way we can keep this up. And so with that, we're on to the next one, and thank you once again.
All right, and up next, we have a $5 super chat from Dark Warrior 137, who says, I get no respect around here. I get no respect. I invade a country for no reason, then because I want to. And then next thing I know, I get shot at. Oh, man, it's terrible. It's terrible.
Oh, man, I'm telling you. Oh, man, I get no respect around here.
Oh, really? You don't, do you?
Oh, no, I'm telling you. It's terrible, terrible.
Well, what happened to you?
Oh, man, I'm telling you. I invaded a foreign country. They started shooting at me. I said, hey, I'm here to liberate you. They said, well, we're going to liberate you from your body. I said, oh, man, this is terrible. Oh, man, absolutely terrible. And they told me I was ugly, too. Oh, man, I'm telling you, I get no respect around here. Oh.
But still, thank you for the support. And I hope that does address that fairly well. I hope that's what you were looking for. And with that, we are on to the next one. And real quick, I actually see people still talking about the whole assault rifle thing. I'm going to do as much research as I can on that. Of course, I want to make this clear. It's not for a political reason or anything. It's just that when I brought that up and I said assault rifle, everyone said there's no such thing. And then I read this book from 1989, 1990, and the word was commonly used in the book. And I was like, well, you know, that contradicts everything I read online where it came from in 1994. So I don't know. I mean, I tried to look at Colt's actual advertising back when they introduced the M16. Their advertising didn't really even call it a rifle or anything. It was just like, oh, look, it's the Army's new, weapon. And it was like, oh, okay. It's like, that doesn't really help me out much. But, you always have to remember, with the gun world and what guns are called, it's a really weird world because according to U.S. Army manuals on firearms, the 1911 is actually an automatic pistol. Although, if you think of the modern term automatic, it is not an automatic, it's a semi-automatic. But because it's self-loading, and back when that pistol was introduced, that was practically automatic by their terms and their standards, they called it an automatic pistol. So, it's a really weird world. Really, it's so weird that words don't really mean anything, for the most part with guns, because you can call it an automatic rifle, you can call it an assault rifle, a sporter rifle, you can call them a million different things. It really doesn't matter, like with the wordage. If it's a rifle, it's a rifle. If it's a shotgun, it's a shotgun. If it's a pistol, it's a pistol. That's really as in-depth as you can get, and then you try and break it down from their action. Like if they're semi-automatic, automatic, bolt action, single shot, rolling block. You can do stuff like that, but, assault rifle, I guess you could say, is kind of an abstract term, but really the question here is, how long has that abstract term been around? Because it looks like it's been around since 1990, at least from what I can tell, and probably even earlier than that, considering how commonly used it was in that book. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Dark Warrior 137 once again, who puts in another $5 super chat and says, I found the day the Leaf Spring Army was born. Look up day 27 at exactly the 1 hour mark, and I spent last night looking through all the streams for it.
And I thank you for the support, Dark Warrior. And I saw that you put that comment down, and I went back to that stream, and I was like, oh, it really is here. So let me go find it. It's Ukraine clashes. Let's see here. It should show up. It's not showing up. Aw, man. Dang it. Now I gotta go find it. Dang, that's gonna take a while. I'm gonna do it though. So on day 27, it was an hour in. Exactly an hour in, actually. Man, scrolling through all these streams is like scrolling through memory lane. I remember making all of these thumbnails. And also doing all of these streams. What's weird, though, is that once you do 408 of them, they all kind of start to blend together, and it never feels like any of them are different than each other. It just feels like you picked up where you left off. But here's the clip. And crazily enough, another thing from back in the day is that the streams would only last, like, this one only lasted 2 hours and 16 minutes. And right now we're already at 2 hours and 50 minutes into this stream.
Using this kind of suspension.
Oh yeah, let me go back. Also, I had a different
Man, you
microphone.
sound so different.
Yeah, I know. I had a different microphone, so I sounded way different back then. But here we go.
Как мы говорится, тут сухпай, тут остатки, да. Сухпая, понятное дело. Ну вот так. В общем, машина здесь проезжала.
Hang on, wait a minute. I don't know a lot about cars, but is that a leaf spring? Goodness, I mean.
Okay, I have to give myself credit way back then. I even said before I said this greatly incorrect statement, I don't know a lot about cars, and then I went on to say the stupidest, most incorrect thing.
That stuff is used on like steam trains in the 1940s. That stuff in America was kind of phased out. Like
That's totally
in,
wrong.
Like, the 40s and 50s. Like you will not find that kind of suspension on anything modern in America.
And, okay, real quick, I actually have to close this down because you're about to see the fallout here in the live chat.
Yet in Russia, they're still using this kind of suspension system. Now, that is archaic. Now, you can sit here and talk about the Russians are advanced and stuff, but if they're using that kind of suspension that you would find on like a Willys Jeep, well, not even Willys Jeep. Willys Jeeps weren't even that cheap. You would find this on like a Model A Ford. That doesn't paint a good picture for your military. But anyways, I mean, like maybe there's a reason that they're using that, but nonetheless, that kind of looks archaic to me. Although they're probably trying to field vehicles as cheap as possible. So we're going to move on. Skip forward.
And like here it comes, Matthew. F-it operator said Chevy trucks still use leaf springs, and this is and Paul Deck said leaf springs are still used, dude. And this is where it all began right here. This is where the Leaf Spring Army was born, was from that statement right there. And I think on day 29, the Leaf Spring Army was finally coined as an actual term in the name of the community. But this is where it comes from. On day 27 of the war, the first month hadn't even ended yet. The first schism hadn't even happened yet at this point. The channel was brand new and fresh. And what's really crazy is that so many people were interested in the war back then. This video got 131,000 views. The stream did. So this stream
was I on the stream?
Yeah, you were on the stream, I believe. If we skip forward to here, I think.
Well, I wasn't even like chatting in the live chat or anything.
Also, look how different the map looks now on Google My Maps. Back then, it looked totally different. Now it looks like this.
Wild. This was literally a year ago. That's crazy to think.
Over a year ago at this point. This was like a year and a month ago.
And other vehicles that were abandoned. Oh, damn. That the Ukrainians are repurposing them into Ukrainian services. Any idea how many they have done with that?
We have. I've got to be honest. The way we talk on stream has become a whole lot better, in my opinion.
Yeah,
over a year.
Definitely.
Because like you sounded like a robot, I sounded like a very small baby child, and we've definitely made this better sounding at least. But one thing I have to say though is that the basic way that you and me have talked on stream has not changed over a year and a month. Like we still have the same ways we talk and everything. So it's crazy. It's just so bizarre to go back like to this point in the war and listen to us talk. It's really bizarre for us. I bet it's really bizarre for y'all, for a lot of y'all who have been here this long, to listen to that from a year ago.
That's wild. It's like a completely different world.
Yeah, it is. It's a totally different world. And let's see, and we only had the Discord. There's still, that Discord won't take you anywhere anymore. And then there's the day 27 map. And what's crazy about how we do the maps is you can click on this day 27 map link and it'll bring you to this week's map still. Like everything that was going on in the war, the current front lines drawn up the way we understood them. I mean, you can literally go back and look at the war week by week. It's crazy. That was actually really cool how that's been done over the war, how we've done the maps. Because you can see the war at the end of each and every week. So
dang.
And also, dang, I know we're about to get to that, but still incredibly cool. And I thank you so much once again, Dark Warrior 137, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running over 380 days after the Leaf Spring Army actually came into being. That's so cool. But with that, and also, Noob of the Year said, "Oh my goodness, he's lowering his voice." Here or now? I don't know when.
He had that Bing Shilling mic before I convinced him to get the new Shure mics. Made a huge difference.
Is it Shure or Shure?
Sure.
Oh, but man, that's
Shure. What do you think this is? Posh? Oh, sure, yeah.
Oh, I'll be having that paper mache. But anyways, with that, we are on to the wait. What are the comments down here on this video? You know, let's see. Kenworth still uses leaf springs. I would have phrased the destruction of Irpine as being leaf springs are still frequently used. Ryan Hughes said, "Great job, Enforcer. Your channel is blowing up." Let's see here. Great work, Enforcers. Secret trademarks and patents left a comment on this video. He's still here.
Yeah, I think he is still here. He's just lurking.
Yeah, it's a Rome thing every day is still here. Ryan Hughes shows up every once in a while, and I've seen Carol Deeds here and there. Let's see. History dude. Let's see here. What else? I'm looking through here because now I'm just interested. Who the hell's here? Let's see. Scott Hill, Ralph Hernandez. He's still here.
Hey, Scott Hill.
Scott Hill? Scott! Oh, yeah. I for some reason, I went and I was like looking at him with the mouse cursor and I just moved down to Ralph. I didn't even mention Scott. Scott's still here. Let's see. Scott Hill again. He left 2 comments. Jennifer Peterson, I think they disappeared. James Wall, she's still here. But man, I mean, this is a snapshot of the war in a day, 380 days ago. Crazy, really, when you think about it. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support and allowing us to go down memory lane for just a few minutes.
Yes, and JD Macker said, "I love them Shure microphones." We do. They're quite nice. I hate it though because I would sound as clear as the Enforcer does if it weren't for the Discord compression. But it kind of degrades the quality. I have the exact same model of mic that he has, so it's a shame that it does that. But anyways, we're moving on to our next super chat, which is a massive $200 donation from Snow White. And thank you so much, Snow White. That is very generous, and we do appreciate it very much. And Snow White says, "Go LSA, that video is epic." And thanks, guys.
And thank you so much for the huge amount of support, Snow White. Are you the real Snow White? Like, the one who, like, ate the apple and everything? If so, crazy. And also, thank you so much for enjoying the LSA. The LSA is unbelievable as a community. And I remember behind the scenes after that night, Matthew and me had a discussion as to what was going to happen about that goof because we got flamed all that night for that goof, and it was the next day too. And we had a discussion over those next 2 days over, are we going to try and ignore it and move on, or what are we going to do about it? And it was actually Matthew who spearheaded the idea that we should coin the Lee Spring Army as being our community. So I have to actually give him credit for being the one who really pushed the idea, because the idea was there, but Matthew was really the one who gave the fuel to the fire on that idea to create the Lee Spring Army into a real deal. And
well, thank you. Thank you. So, and then I'll put it on a shirt.
Yeah, and then we put that thing on a shirt. But still, thank you so much once again for the support, Snow White, and enjoying that little LSA video. It was epic. It was so cool, and it was really something back then when this war started, and it was brand new, and everyone was everywhere, and everything was happening all the time. And things were happening, things were being made. We were running unbelievable fundraisers because our fundraisers are great now, but way back then, our fundraisers were normally getting on a weekly basis $20,000 to $30,000 raised for Ukraine. It was an unbelievable time. It was crazy when you really think about it. And I'm so happy. Whenever I look back at stuff like that, I'm so happy that I've been doing this for 408 days because this community and everything that has been done around here has been unbelievable. And I got to thank you so much, Snow White, for enjoying this Lee Spring Army and also enjoying watching the formation of the Lee Spring Army on day 27, an hour in. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope I addressed that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And Jerry S. at the beginning of the all. Jerry S. was around before the beginning of the all, actually. He's been here for longer than the Lee Spring Army. But with that, we are on to the next one.
Hell, and when I jumped on this thing, I think I was a sophomore in college at that point. and now we're about to graduate
Yeah,
here
yeah,
shortly, so that's kind of weird.
Yeah, I was a sophomore in college too, about to become a junior, and then I've gone all the way from being a junior to a senior, and now we're graduating. I mean, you know, some people are gonna be like, "How the hell do you do that? Max credits every semester, even the summer." That's how we did it.
Yeah.
Summer,
no summers off.
Yeah, no summers off. Like, you know, if you ever thought we had like summer breaks or anything, you're crazy. We never have summer breaks. We just go all out. In law school, though, what will be weird is that we pretty much have to take summer breaks. Which is something that we didn't really have to do in university, you know, the one we're going at right now, that's a normal college. But we will have to in law school, which would be so weird because the summers will just be off. It's like, what do you do? I guess
I
we'll be
think I'll
making
appreciate
videos.
that in law school, though, just because of how intense it is during the actual semesters.
Yeah, I mean, that's true, but also, I know one thing, this YouTube channel will probably still be running through law school. You know, whether the war is going on or not, we'll still probably be doing stuff. So the summers, I guess, will be used to really get a lot of videos done or something. I don't know. But with that,
Facts.
we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to StrayCat241, who puts in a $5 donation and says, "My trucks got leaf springs, LSA. If I'm tired of fall asleep before the stream, I listen to it on the way to work, like an old school radio broadcast."
Hey, and I thank you so much for the support. And also, I thank you for saying something that's a little bit of a relic. Many people wonder why I always talk so much during my streams, because sometimes y'all can just see what I'm talking about. Like, I'll sit there and say, the guy's grabbing the rifle, he's aiming it, and y'all are watching the video where he's doing it. The reason why I've done this is because way back in the day, way back, like around the time the Lee Spring Army was founded, so many people would say, thank you so much for saying everything that's happening, even when it's redundant, because sometimes I don't watch my screen. I just listen to it like a radio show, like you said. And so for ever since then, all the way up to the present day, we over-explain almost everything. If there is no English language being spoken in a video, we're reading off the subtitles, we're explaining what's happening, because there are people who watch it like a radio show, and we want to make sure that they know and kind of hear what's going on that we're looking at on screen. And so with that, thank you for the support, and also long live the Lee Spring Army, and I hope that addresses that fairly well. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again for the support. Also, I see that the whole assault rifle thing has now moved on into the category, like, the realm of politics. It was, I knew it was eventually going to happen, and I would have to ask if y'all keep politics out of that. Really, what we're just asking about is that an actual technical term or not? We're not trying to get into the political sphere of how that word's used or anything like that. It's really just, like, how long has that word existed? I don't really, like, it's not really about the connotations or the affiliations with it or anything. It's how long has that word been around. That's what we're trying to get to. It's not political. So with that, and also it's a violation of the rules of this channel to be political. We can't be political. We can't pick sides or anything. And so with that, we are on to the next one. But thank you once again for the support, and I hope that does address that fairly well.
All right, and up next, we have a $5 super chat from Mr. Lunchtime, who puts in his lunch money, and he hasn't done that in a long time. It's good to see Mr. Lunchtime. He says, your thoughts on the James Vasquez controversy. Great work, guys, and I have a mocha frap from Stars Coffee on me, and stay toasty, my friends.
And I thank you so much for the support, Mr. Lunchtime. It's been ages ever since you've thrown in Super Chat, and we haven't seen you around a lot lately. We hope you're doing good, and we welcome you back. I remember that one time, Matthew, when Speed Break came back for like 2 days, and then he disappeared.
Yeah.
I'm like, we remember all of our viewers who have been around here for a long time. We remember y'all. Like, if you know y'all.
He's on the Twitter. I saw Mark Bohachuk over there on the Twitter.
Yeah, if y'all ever are here and we get to know y'all a lot and talk to y'all a lot and y'all disappear, we remember y'all forever. Like, I still remember Zeta Lane, who disappeared around like day 150 or so and has never come back. I guess that maybe they got burned out of the war or something. But you know, like, we remember everyone. But anyways. I would have to say, and I'm going to be completely unfiltered here, because I know a lot of people usually don't want to say things like, there are scammers out there and things like that, but there are scammers out there. And one thing that a lot of scammers and conmen love to do is always try and get onto a get-rich-quick scheme. Remember Ty Lopez, who was a very big one, and, you know, there's even people like that around still. They never disappear, just new people take their place. And a lot of scammers and conmen realize that the best way to pull off a scam is to hop onto a good cause, a truly good and noble cause like the war in Ukraine, and then take care of people's, will take advantage of people's kindness for their own benefit and gain. And that's something that happens a lot, and you'll see that in everything. Like think of anything out there, anything whatsoever, you will find scammers and con men as a part of it. And that's why we've always said, ever since the beginning of this war, to be incredibly vigilant with the people that you support and the people that you send your funds to. Always make sure that they have some kind of legal accountability. Probably the most important thing is truly, let's see. Oh no. Well, one of the longtime viewers disappeared because they apparently got a little too political.
There's a timeout.
I thought they got me. I was like, man,
no, that'd be pretty harsh.
But there are always scammers out there. I can't ever think of a time where there hasn't been a scammer. And you've always got to be careful about that stuff. That's why we say, and when we say this, some people always fill in the blank and go, oh, you're talking about so-and-so. No, we're not talking about anyone in particular. We're talking about everyone. Scrutinize everyone. Always make sure that there is some kind of legal accountability there for your funds to actually be taken care of. That's why we only support 501 nonprofits through YouTube Give. Because YouTube Give, first off, gives a written guarantee, which is legally enforceable, that they manage all of the funds and 100% of your donation will go to that nonprofit. So if they ever do anything that's against that, you can sue them for that and they could lose their shirts for it. The nonprofits that also get that support as well, those donations, they're also held to the same I guess you could say, accountability. They are registered nonprofits, and they're legally required in the United States, if you're a 501 nonprofit, to list off all of the donations you received and where those went. And that's all public information and available. And that's why we only support on this channel those kinds of nonprofits. Because, like, for example, with Vasquez, if we had ever supported Ripley's Heroes, we would have been supporting people getting scammed. And whenever that was found out a year down the road, who knows how many of y'all would have gone and donated to that that fake fundraiser because we told y'all to, and then have been completely scammed. And that's why we always make sure to tell people to be very careful with who they support. I'm not really a big fan of, and there's a lot of people out there who do it. So of course, just make sure that who you donate to, you trust. But that's why we never go and even encourage people to donate to people who are not legally liable to take care of your donations, because there's always the chance that it could be a scam. And we never want to sit there and support anything that could be a scam.
When they're nonprofits, though, they can't lie about where the money is going because they have to disclose that to the IRS in their Form 990. And that's the one thing that we examine about every single charity that we promote on our channel, is examining exactly how they spend their money, where they spend it, who the officers are, what their salaries are, and that way we know for a fact what's happening instead of having to take somebody's word that they're sending it to the right place.
And that's one thing. That's one thing that's very important, is that if you're ever doing anything, especially with money, you need to make sure that whatever is happening is in writing. Otherwise, no one's legally obligated to do anything. And of course, I'm not giving legal advice or anything here, but no one's legally obligated to do anything. So I could tell you that, hey, I want $20,000 from all of y'all because I'm going to go buy a drone and fly to Ukraine and use it. There is nothing rather than my word, which is not usually legally enforceable. It would be legally enforceable because, I think audio recordings are legally enforceable like that. I'm not sure, Matthew. Is it?
If you say you're going to use money in one way and you represent that way to raise funds, and you don't use it that way, that would be defrauding the donors.
Okay, so you can't really do that, but you could possibly try and get away with it. And then another thing that's always very concerning to look at is if someone's in a foreign country compared to you. Like, let's say you're in the United States and someone else is in France, and then they tell you, hey, support me, give me money and then I'll send it somewhere. If they scam you, there's really no way to get to them. Even if they're in France, which is a aligned country with the United States, there is really no way you can sue them or try and get your money back or anything. They could just disappear off the face of the earth with your money, and that's the end of it. That's why we always say, and James Vasquez is a great cautionary tale, to make sure that you support registered nonprofits that are legally liable if they screw with your money. And that's why we only do things for YouTube Give, because that ensures that your donations are safe and they will be going to where they should be going. So with that, I hope that does addressed that fairly well, Mr. Lunchtime. I thank you so much once again for the support. And that is really our official stance on that. That's why whenever anyone comes up and goes, hey, could you support my Uncle Joe's fundraiser, we always ask, can we get the 1099s? Because if there are
Or
no
Form 990s,
oh, no, I'm sorry,
actually.
yeah, not 1099s, that's another form. The Form 990s. Because if we do not get the Form 990s, there's no way to guarantee that it isn't just a scam. So with that, we are on to the next one. Oh, say what?
Go ahead. I was going to say something, but I won't go into a rabbit hole.
And with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next. Also, East Malibu said, call him out by name. We're not calling anyone out by name, because that's up to y'all. That's on y'all's discretion whether y'all trust someone enough to give them money and then hope it goes somewhere. So we're not calling anyone out by name. And for some reason, whenever we always give that disclaimer, which is just a general disclaimer, because we always want people to be careful, usually people go and they auto-fill in the blank, and then they go, oh, you're talking about so-and-so channel. We're not talking about anyone in particular. If you trust them, that's fine. You trust them. But I'll always be careful with who you trust, especially if there's no legal obligation for them to do anything, and they're also in another country from where you live. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $5 super chat from Opus, who says, Swedish military exercise Aurora 2023 to start soon on 24th of April, simulating attack on Gotland and defense of the Isle, 26,000 personnel.
And I thank you for the support. And he's talking about the island of Taiwan?
No, talking about the Swedish military exercise attack on Gotland and defense of the Isle.
Oh, I'm so sorry. For some reason, I didn't hear Gotland in there. But that's very interesting here. Gotland's actually very strategically important, at least in the Cold War, and even now. It is the largest island in the Baltic Sea, and it's in a very commanding position of, I guess you could say, the central or southern Baltic Sea. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And it's really cool to hear that the Swedish military is pulling off some exercises on the Gotland Island. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Crafty Appy, who says, everyone please remember and try not to worry that Ukraine is savvy, clever, and sneak. And they use social media as a weapon to head fake their real plans.
And that is actually quite true. I would agree with that. Both sides have been trying to use social media, for one reason or another. The Ukrainians do that, and there's nothing wrong with that. Of course, deception is important in a war because you never want anyone to really know what you're doing. So I thank you for the support and also pointing that out. But at the same time, usually when they make these kinds of announcements, there is an offensive that happens somewhere. They may misguide the Russians into thinking it'll happen one place and do it in another, but usually when these announcements are made, there is an offensive on the way. And so with that, thank you once again. I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat again from Crafty Appy, who says, why do you think China is prioritizing Taiwan right now ahead of other former territories and countries that they've been trying to get back for decades?
They're trying to prioritize Taiwan because there's, and of course we don't talk about politics on this channel, but considering it's a communist versus capitalist or a communist versus non-communist kind of thing, I guess it is a little bit easier to talk about politics with this. Of course, not taking sides, but I'll explain the situation. So the Chinese, the communist Chinese on mainland China claim that the non-communist Chinese on Taiwan are terrible people, and they're the people who subjugated the Chinese peasantry for decades and treated them poorly. They were a continuation of the Qing dynasty's poor treatment of the peasantry, and so they have to be destroyed. And also, that's a part of their land. That's a part of communist China, according to China. However, Taiwan claims, or the Republic of China as it should be called, they claim they own all of China, mainland China, the communist Chinese China, because they really haven't agreed to an end to the Chinese Civil War. Neither of them signed a peace treaty, so it is still on technically. So they say that all of mainland China is really theirs. They should have it back. And the communist Chinese are an illegal country, illegally occupying their land. And so that's kind of the stance in between the two of them. It's not really the same with other countries like it is in between these two, because both of them claim to be the true rulers of all of China. Either Taiwan for the communist Chinese or either all of mainland China for the Taiwanese themselves. So that's why they really put a lot more weight and precedent on Taiwan. And on top of that, Taiwan is very economically successful for the size of the island and the population they have. If you look at the GDP of Taiwan, the GDP of Taiwan. It is around 774.73 billion US dollars, nearly getting on up towards $1 trillion. And if you look at Taiwan's population, it is only 23.57 million people. It has a population that's 2 million smaller than North Korea, and yet has a GDP that's about that size. It's actually a very impressive country economically. And so if the Chinese
are workers.
Yeah, they are hard-working folks down there in Taiwan. And if the Chinese are able to bring this under their ilk, they're adding almost an entire $1 trillion US worth of gross domestic product to their economy and their industrial base as well. And so that is why they really want Taiwan back, is both for the political reasons and also for the economic reasons. And so with that, I hope that does answer that question fairly well. And I thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And I know Huawei is over there like just sweating bullets, hoping that China takes Taiwan so they can try to corner the market with Apple with those chips. They're probably just waiting for that. But anyways.
But real quick before we move on, I know we're kind of... how many super chats do we have left, by the way, just to have a track on time?
We have 2, but we have a lot of good live chats I want to get to, too.
And I just saw one here real quick that I wanted to address. CME4PC said, Mao's Little Red Book is actually a blueprint for tyranny. And now I'll say this: being a bachelor in history at this point, pretty much, because it'll be official in 2 weeks, and having taken actually I believe 2 entire Chinese history courses on modern China, modern communist China, I had to read Mao's Little Red Book, and it really is. It pretty much advocates for just straight up violence in any given situation. And it's wild. Like when you read it, you wouldn't think that people would just, it would be a very popular idea that if your neighbor has a little bit more wealth than you, to just go over there and kill them and seize their property. But that's what the Little Red Book says. And it's like, what? It's like, I didn't expect that, actually. I thought it'd be something, a little bit more tame, but it is not tame at all. It's actually it's a pretty violent book. And if you ever look at the Cultural Revolution, which is based off of Mao's Little Red Book, it was very violent as well. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $2 super chat from Delper Bob. He says, Good Friday prayer for Ukraine.
And I thank you so much for the support. Sadly, I don't know if I'd be able to give a really good prayer on it, but if anyone would want to give a Good Friday prayer for Ukraine,
he's saying he is.
I thought I was gonna be like, if anyone wants to give one, they can. But still, thank you for the support, and it's good to hear that you gave a prayer to Ukraine on Good Friday. And so with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
All right, and up next, we have a $2 super chat from Mimkov, who says, Mustache Fun.
Geschlecht verlag me. Thank you so much for the support.
Mustache Fun.
And I thank you for the mustache fun. And hopefully it's not the short mustache that's right on your nose. Hopefully it's a nice mustache like I have on my goatee. And with that, thank you once again for the support. And with that, we are now on, I think, into the live chats.
And yes, we are. And believe it or not, it's kind of expected because it is Good Friday. Kind of low viewership tonight. No Morse code decoders tonight. I hated to report that, but sadly that is the case tonight. So, Enforcer, what did it say? Oh, you forgot.
I forgot. I forgot. I literally make the message and I forgot. But whenever they would usually say it, I would know it'd be the correct one, but I've completely forgotten it.
Well, since you forgot that, I'll read this instead from Christian Cruz. He said, Praise the Lord and pass the ammo, and amen.
Amen, brother. That's actually the name of a song.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Praise the Lord and pass the ammunition. Praise. You got to go listen to it. It's a 1940s like swing song about a B-17 under fire, and the pilot like literally like gives up the joystick and runs back to one of the turrets, and he's like on the gun and he's yelling to one of the crew members like, pass the ammunition or we'll all, pretty much get killed up here.
Well, that's wild. But yeah, anyways, ding 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 ding.
Nobody got it, but that right there, Matthew, is a great confirmation as to a lot of viewers are still, in like the Good Friday thing, because the viewership was low tonight, considering we had absolutely no Morse code decoders on tonight. They're all off for Good Friday as well. So with that,
I imagine the entire weekend will probably be like that since it's Easter weekend.
That's true. But we'll be here.
But we're still streaming anyway. Yeah, we'll be here. So don't feel lonely.
will still be here because while it is Easter, and that's a very big deal to us as well, we still want to make sure that we're covering the news and, of course, running our Sunday fundraiser. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and a question from the live chat. We have one from Diexel, who says, any info on the upcoming offensive?
We do not have any info on the upcoming offensive, rather than they've raised 9 new brigades for this offensive, mostly equipped with Western weaponry, but we don't have any additional info as to their troop movements, their proposed attack paths, or anything like that. And also that would be OPSEC, an OPSEC violation, and possibly get folks killed if we knew that. But still...
If you believe that the classified documents that we saw on Twitter are real, it looks like Ukraine received most of their equipment on March 30th that they were promised. If you believe it.
If you believe it. And so with that, after that awkward silence, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Siba, who says, when do you think Ukraine will start using air support?
Ukraine has been using air support the entire war. It's just that it hasn't been a large amount. And they probably won't ever fully use air support because neither side has really been able to destroy the other's surface-to-air missile defense systems effectively to be able to utilize their air support properly. So they probably will never get to a chance of using nothing but air support at this point in the war, at least from what we're seeing right now. And so with that, I hope we answered that question fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one we have is from Pellet Pushers TV, who says, do we know or have any idea where the Pentagon leak came from?
The Pentagon, well, it came from the Pentagon.
Actually, the Pentagon says it came from either Russia or a pro-Russian source. But my only thing is this, though, about that theory. The original document that I'm looking at, it shows Russia losing men at a much faster rate than Ukraine. So why would Russia put out something that basically hurts the appearance of their own military?
That's a good point. That would be really weird. And also, while we have a no politics rule, I have to give a specific note as well that also extends into like no religion, as in putting in your religious beliefs and trying to bash others with that. Because I see some people getting involved in that after we wish people to have a good Easter, and now it appears that there's about to be a holy war happening in the live chat in between 2 different groups. So I'd have to ask y'all to stop that as well, because that kind of falls into, well, it doesn't really fall into politics, but it pretty much causes the same violent fights as politics do. So I would have to agree with you there. It wouldn't really make a lot of sense for them to release any kind of documents like that would make them look bad. But then again, the casualty numbers were so low for the Russians. They're unbelievable. 45,000 over a year and a month? I mean, that is very low. We've seen more guys than that die on film.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of weird. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And up next, we have a question from, let's see here, Mental Pot, who says, the counteroffensive will begin very soon. The Russians will be pushed back. And do you agree, Matt? And for me, before the enforcer answers, since he did say Matt, I think it will begin very soon. In my opinion, I think Ukraine has been stockpiling all of the equipment they've been receiving from the West in preparation for this counteroffensive that's coming up, the massive one. And I think when that happens, it'll come on very fast, and it should be in the next couple of weeks. But enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say it's definitely going to happen within the next couple of weeks. The weather conditions will be ideal, and also they are in a good position to do that. So I would have to say it's mostly going to be a few weeks as well. And so I hope I answered that fairly well. And also I saw something that I have to address real quick. This is said a lot, and I kind of have to disagree with it on a historical perspective. Not trying to push any kind of agenda here or anything. But I saw someone say, religion and greed are the cause of all wars. Now, I'll agree with greed in a way. It's more of economics are the cause of wars. Not really the greed of it, but more so not wanting to, starve to death or anything. But the thing of, everyone always wants to point out religion, but it sometimes isn't religion. Well, really, it isn't really religion. It's just any difference. If there is a difference, there will be a war. Like, you can look at, for example, let me think of some wars here. Let's talk about the Italian Wars of Unification. The entire Italian peninsula was Catholic. The really only real difference there was in the late 19th century is that there were different Italian cultures. There was northern Italian cultures and southern Italian cultures. And that was enough, along with nationalism, to create the unification wars on the Italian peninsula. And, you know, there's been plenty of wars in between countries that have the exact same religions, like France and Spain during the Napoleonic Wars, or any of the South American countries that are all Catholic, at least in the 19th century. So I would have to say it's really not, it really isn't always religion that causes wars, really just any difference. If there's any kind of difference, whether it be very deep or a surface level, that can be enough to cause a war. But with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next question goes to Alex Wolf, who says, how much more time before we start seeing Bradleys in action?
Probably, really, to be honest with you, I don't know, because we were expecting them to be in action by this point, but we've never gotten any video or picture evidence to show they're in action. So I would have to take a guess at maybe another 2 months, but that is a very big time frame, and they may be in there before then. And so with that, I hope that answers that question fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And also, the Morse code ended up getting decoded anyway by
Really?
C-Fay. Yes. And C-Fay said the Morse code says Bakhmut will hold until the last minute and Slavia, Ukraine. And it was also solved by, let's see here, Dark Warrior 137 as well.
And, oh, nice. So, that's the sound of money. And y'all did get it correct. That is the Morse code message. I may have forgotten it earlier, but as soon as I heard it, I was like, yep, that's the one. Bakhmut will hold until the last minute. And once they leave, that'll have been everything the Ukrainian army could have done to inflict damage on the Russians. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one. And of course, thank you all once again for deciphering that Morse code message this far into the war.
Indeed. And up next, we have a question from Birel50, who says, what type of weapons, vehicle / role would you guys prefer to personally use on or near the front if you have to? And for me, I would say personally, I would just like to be a typical ground soldier, preferably in a nice unit, of course. The weapon I would like to use would not be any AK variant rifle of any type. I would like to use a Daniel Defense, preferably Block 2 M4, and a vehicle. I don't think I get to choose that. Role, and I've already said that. So Enforcer, what say you?
If I could choose, I would also be infantry as well. I would choose an MRAP, because I know I would never die in an MRAP. Like, who in the hell ever dies in an MRAP? I've never seen that happen yet. I know I'm just kidding. There are instances, but it's very, very rare. And I'd also have to say that my weapon of choice, and I know I'm going to sound very old-fashioned saying this, it would have to be an M16 A1, because I like it a little bit better than an M4. But yeah, that would be what I would do. So that would be what I would pick at least. And so with that, I hope that does answer that question fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right. And up next, we have a super chat from Eric S., who makes a return, and he puts in a $5 super chat, and he says, greetings from Cali, and pull a question from the chat.
And hello to Cali, California, from Eric. And of course, we'll make sure to grab one from the live chat as well, but thank you so much once again for the support, all the way from the Lee Spring Army Division in California. And so with that, let's get to the live chat.
And the live chat goes to Wooly, who says, how successful is the Ukrainian recruiting efforts? Because you guys never mentioned anything about it.
And can you reread that one again?
How successful is the Ukrainian recruiting efforts? Because you guys never mentioned anything about it.
And that's right. We really don't mention a lot about Ukrainian recruiting because there's not really a lot of numbers on it because it's an OPSEC thing. But every once in a while we get something that's official, like 9 whole brigades being raised. We got that number. But we don't really know a lot about the recruiting. We do know that the Ukrainians are conscripting soldiers. That is something that is commonly happening. And there's also Ukrainian units that go around looking for conscript dodgers, or really draft dodgers more so. So we do know that they are conscripting. But from what we understand, the amount of conscriptions is somewhat small because they're getting enough volunteers. But we don't know how many. We don't really have the breakdown or the percentages of any of that. We're just kind of going off of what we've heard a little bit, kind of like in circles and rumors a little bit. But with that, I hope that does address that the best we can. And we're on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Ender Slayer, who says, do you know what Operation Mincemeat was in World War II?
Yes, Operation Mincemeat was when they took a homeless guy off the streets of London that had just died randomly, and they dressed him up to be believe it was a British officer, and put him and glued I think it was sewed on or glued on a suitcase to his hand. They dropped him off near Gibraltar. He washed up on shore, and then the Spanish got a hold of him. And of course, with Spain being fascist under Francisco Franco, they contacted the Germans. The Germans came down and took a look at the classified documents, and then the Spanish told the British, "Hey, we found one of your officers who was apparently dead at sea." The plans told the Germans that the British were going to be landing somewhere else. I forgot where it was, but then they ended up landing, I believe, in Sicily, if I remember the story correctly. By that point, it was 1943 or so, and so then they landed in Sicily. Now that I've said that whole story, let me make sure Operation Mincemeat is the right one. So let me type it in. Operation Mincemeat.
It's a movie.
It was about Sicily. I got it all right. Okay, I got it right about the tramp who died from eating rat poison, all that stuff. Good. We got it right. So, it was a correct story. So that is, I have heard of Operation Mincemeat, and that's a little bit of the story behind it. It was bizarre, and the craziest thing is that it worked. The Germans almost believed everything we fooled them on. Like, they even believed that the Ghost Army was a real thing, and we would be landing at Pas de Calais, and then we landed at Normandy instead. They really, they weren't that smart of tacticians. Once their element of surprise was gone, they were pretty easy to beat, at least is what we can tell. But with that, we are now...
You know, we were really screwing around with Italy big time, like in the World War II. Because I remember, I think it was the CIA went and sprayed LSD on some village in Italy, like to test its effects.
That was after World War II. That was like in the 50s. And I think that was some French village, too.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, a cruiser fired shells filled with LSD at a town, and then they just breathed it in, and then they just observed what happened. At least that's
and then they all like started going bonkers. The bread started getting messed up or something. I can't remember like all the details, but it was kind of whack.
But I don't really know if that story is true or not, because
it's true.
Well, it was on it was on the History Channel at 11 o'clock at night. I mean, like, that's
it's got to be true. It's a History Channel thing.
I don't know, because they also said that they also said, Matty, that in the 40s we had a cloaking device for a destroyer, and it was like,
oh, you hadn't heard about that?
Oh god, oh god, man, you're gonna have people running off and going, oh my god, they're idiots. but you really, in all seriousness, we did mess with the Italians a lot in the Second World War. I think the funniest part where we messed with them is when we started beating them so badly. Benito Mussolini went into the Italian parliament one day, and he said, we've got to fight this war better. And they said, you have to fight this war better. And then they switched sides. That's probably the funniest part of the whole war. And then Benito had to go running into northern Italy, and then he got beat to death by some crowd in some village. But anyways, we are on to the final question of the night.
All right, and that question goes to Frequency Harmonic, who says, Enforcer, really? Operational plans of the Ukrainian forces are a much smaller deal than fuel type for HIMARS. I'm befuddled, and I repeat, befuddled on that analysis.
Befuddled? Matthew, ban this, man. I'm just kidding. But but that is a good statement. However, it didn't disclose that information. It didn't really disclose a lot that was really in depth. It was all surface level information that we kind of have covered a little bit, really. Like Western advisors going into Ukraine, we've covered that. So then they say there's 90 special forces guys. It's like, those are probably the advisors. We also have covered all the equipment. We covered the 9 brigades being raised using mostly Western equipment. And then the documents somehow exposed that we did that. And it's like, we already reported that, like a week or two before. So it's, it didn't really expose anything that secret. Ukrainian battle plans are very important. Of course, that's vitally important, but they didn't really expose that. So that's why I said in that analysis about those classified documents, at least it didn't expose anything damning or very important about anything going on, because it didn't expose their battle plans, it didn't expose our technological secrets. It was just kind of like a surface level analysis of what was going on. So there wasn't really anything that bad there. So I hope you're not befuddled by that. Because it wasn't supposed to be befuddling. Of course, that's incredibly important, very pertinent information. Battle plans are. You can get everyone killed if battle plans are exposed. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I thank you all so much once again for watching, even on Good Friday. And of course, if y'all enjoyed, make sure to hit the like button, make sure to comment, and make sure to subscribe as we run this stream every single day of the week, 6 days a week. at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, except for Monday. We take Mondays off. But make sure to subscribe, like, and comment, because we'll, of course, be here tomorrow covering the next 24 hours of the war in Ukraine and getting ready for our Easter fundraiser. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, and, of course, Slava Ukraini!
And Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava, and that's all. Good night.
Oh, wait, I forgot that's old.
Yes. The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
Ще не вмерла України ні слава, ні воля. Ще нам, браття українці, усміхнеться доля. Згинуть наші вороженьки, як роса на сонці. Запануємо ми, браття, у своїй сторонці. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького роду. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького